Good morning and welcome to the Town Council Budget Workshop. It's April 12th. We're just going to start out. I'll give a brief explanation of how we're going to do this today. We all have our budget books up here. We're actually going to go page by page, how it's organized. But we're going to start off with the town manager giving his overview, and then we'll go by departments and we'll invite the department heads up to ask questions and discuss their budgets. So go ahead.
Great. Thank you, Madam Chair. So I guess some logistics just ahead of it, the meeting. Just for the public, the council has in past years done this workshop on a Saturday. So it's more informal. You're not eating up 2 or 3 night meetings on your already busy calendar. I want to thank ahead of time all of our staff and a member of the public for attending today. But hopefully it's a very lively discussion. That being said, just some general highlights. Sharon and I will be working mostly off of spreadsheets here, but I think for the council, you have your budget packet. We'll also reference that, and it has the page numbers, which will hopefully be very helpful. Overall, the municipal budget as proposed is $23,480,933. That's an increase over last year of 4.7%. And that's not the increase on our side of the mill rate or the town's mill rate in general. We are using more non-property tax revenue to offset this year. Primarily, we have some revenue increases in other areas, but primarily TIF revenues. Another highlight for this budget is, although we're not necessarily going to discuss it, the county assessment is up 8.4%. And at the high level, more TIF funds, we're trying to strategically use them to offset our operating expenditures where it's allowed, within reason, and also formulate a plan for the next couple of years to slowly increase it, but then evaluate all the TIF districts in general, if it's cost effective at that time. Right now it is, but we're going to be watching it. Happy to go over, Susie, do you want me to go over the
If you
the big ticket items that are in,
Yep.
in the, so the council has this, but anybody following at home or later. One key item is the transfer of about $275,000 for back into the municipal budget for the school resource officers. So essentially what we're doing is taking that out of the school budget and putting it into the municipal budget to try to help the overall fiscal picture this year for the school department. I'm also proposing the addition of 4 more firefighter EMT/paramedic positions, depending on how they're advertised. Within the department, that would bring the total staffing of the fire department for non-management up to 20. Am I correct, Chief? 20. Those positions are slated to be funded with TIF revenue. We can't do that for every position moving forward, but with a straight base, our TIF districts have that much call volume and the need for those positions. My number one request for the town council this year is a payroll specialist in the finance department. No reflection on the finance department. I think they work very, very hard and harder than they need to or should. And I think if you asked any department manager in the audience, they're raising their hands, they would also agree this is probably number one priority for the town. As we've grown, so have the demands on that department, which trickles down to everybody else. Sure, this will be a hot topic, but I've proposed the elimination of the silver bullet recycling containers. We can talk about that when we get to waste disposal in Public Works later on. It's about a $50,000 give or take savings. It does not account for time, labor, or the actual disposal costs. That's just, or incidental costs, that's just the silver bullets. Another highlight, just because we had to spend a lot of money on it this year, and I prefer to spend the money when we have it and not plan on spending it when I don't know if we're going to have it, but purchasing the totes. Is this a demo one, Terry? The demo tote, so curbside collection with mechanical arms will start sometime in 2027. It's almost $800,000 to buy all of them. Some of that funding is coming out of the TIF districts for the eligible totes within that district. The rest is coming out of Capital Part 2. Some of the other items, we try to work with the school department on their rent for this building, which essentially is just offsetting utilities. That's been decreased to $25,000 this year in the municipal budget, down from 90. We have $200,000 in capital part 2 budgeted for the tennis courts refurbishments. We may or may not need to get a little bit more money. I've been talking to department managers, but I think we'll internally figure that out as that project moves forward. So that's the general high-level highlights. There's obviously changes in the municipal budget. More or less, I would describe the budget, though, is not dramatically changing from its current structure. So happy to answer any questions right now, or you want to dive into different components in your budget book?
Do you have any, if anybody has any questions right now, I think we'll start out, I think there's some budget summaries and things like that, but if everybody's okay, we can skip to the revenue page, just so that we can, if anybody has any questions. Which is page 11 in my book.
Yep, so it'd be 11 into 12 in your books.
Yep.
So I'm going to cheat and just go to my spreadsheet. So we're transferring in an additional 1.175 million in TIF funds from last year, so that's an increase of TIF funds of 43-ish%. The non-property tax revenue, so that's basically everything else that isn't property taxes, we're proposing an increase of 1.8%. My philosophy, and I think the philosophy of my predecessor in the town of Gorham in general over the years, has been to be conservative with our revenue estimates. And that helps us in a number of areas. One, it helps us with our capital part 2 every year. So generally speaking, we come in with more revenue than we estimated. I also have no idea what's going on in the world right now. I'm going to be honest. With vehicle pricing, so motor vehicle excise tax is a big revenue, state revenue sharing, the concerns with the state budget on if that might be recalled at a later date. I mean, there's a lot of variables here, but with our revenue in general, there is a buffer built in. So some municipalities go right up to the estimate, which I generally think is a mistake because it allows you no breathing room whatsoever. If we get extra revenue, it doesn't mean that we can just go spend it on anything we want. It goes into the town's undesignated fund balance, and then the coming year, it goes towards our capital part 2 budget. So it's a pretty good system that the town has in general. I'm happy to answer any specific questions on any specific revenue and line items for you.
I just want to say that I appreciate the way it's broken out before, because I was looking at last year's, and everything's kind of lumped in together. So I like that it's, by department in this format. So you're comfortable with the revenue sharing numbers and things like that, or you're just leaving them?
Yeah, so the revenue sharing, the last estimate I saw from the state, so the state has been matching the 5% of what we're supposed to get, and we are I think under about $1 million or a little bit under $1 million less than that projection. That's where we've been the last year or two. Again, that buffer. So if the state doesn't provide as much revenue sharing, but again, it just goes into our capital part 2 fund at a later date. So that building permits, we tend to be a little bit more aggressive on the building permits to try to actually have it reflect that. But if you get one large commercial structure to come through, or something of that nature, that can skew what the projections are in any given year. But generally speaking, those are pretty consistent. Ambulance billing has been better since we adjusted the structure a couple years ago. That's more consistent. Trash tags, as we've talked about many, many times, in not this fiscal year, but the next fiscal year, that revenue stream of about $600,000 won't be there anymore, unless the council wants to explore finding a way to have the totes and charge, but most municipalities don't go that route. It's just the honor system.
Any questions on the revenue? All right. We will start off with the administration department.
So the substantial difference you'll see in administration this year, all right, pages here. is the addition of the payroll specialists. That's why you're seeing a 9.1% increase overall. But generally speaking, not a ton of changes. We've increased our financial services. That's our audit. That's more or less our increases every year. I did increase legal slightly, and that's because the town will have to go find a new law firm. I don't know where we're going to land on that. If we don't need to spend the money, we don't spend the money. It's not like it's allocated and they get that money. It's when we use the law firm, we draw it down from it. But the administration basically covers my office and the finance office.
Just out of curiosity, the line that says per diems and substitutes, I know you don't budget anything for it, but we spent money. What was that for?
I believe, and Sharon can correct me if I'm wrong, is that when, so she's talking about per diem substitutes, is that when you hired somebody to fill in? Oh, it might have been our intern.
Okay.
Because with Munis, we've reclassified the naming structure.
Right, that's why I thought, I was like, substitutes, but,
It was our intern last year.
okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's something I should point out, that what you've seen in the past is going to look a little different because last year we were in Munis, but we still use an Excel spreadsheet. Sharon helped me out. I still have my own Excel spreadsheet. The department managers didn't get that. They had to use Munis. I got the cheat sheet this year, but it will look a little different in the structure and the naming structure than what you've seen in the past.
So one question on that, the actual, in the past, it said the actual that we spent as of a certain date.
It's year to date, so
Right, so,
it's,
but what's the date that it's a year to date of? Is it?
it would have been a little bit before we published the budget.
Okay.
Sharon can give you the exact date.
Because,
April 3rd?
Okay.
Yeah.
yep, I just wanted to make sure, because in past, it's been December or something like that, so.
What we may do, and if any of the counselors or any staff members, I've had a member of the public call me and found one typo. I would be disappointed if this member of the public did not find a typo. But if we find any suggestions or improvements or typos, your final version, we may just add and tweak that.
Okay. Go ahead.
Excuse me, I have a question I think is pertinent at this stage. When I was looking through all of these, and I noticed that it didn't look like there were raises necessarily, and then on page 84, there's a big number for compensation adjustments. So am I correct in
You are.
gathering?
Thank you for mentioning that, and I typically skip over it until we get the question. Long has been the tradition in Gorham, and I think it's a good tradition for any number of reasons to do, but employee adjustments, wage adjustments are one line item that come July 1, they're rolled into the budget. So for non-union positions, a 3% cost of living adjustment is included in that number on page 84 for compensation adjustments. That would also include compensation adjustments for union positions based on their contract, as well as there's usually a tiny bit of wiggle room if we hired an employee mid-year and we had to give them $1,500 more than we budgeted for or something like that. So,
Thank you, because I just thought, wow.
yeah, we do value the employees, and I would strongly feel that they are entitled to a cost of living adjustment, as are most municipalities. But yeah, that's how Gorham's traditionally done it. I think it puts less focus on the employee, which is a good thing. It also, and I'm just going to be truthful with this, when we're doing our collective bargaining negotiations, it's less transparent in a good way of what I have budgeted, so we can have a fair negotiation. I mean, we still try to give with what's in there within reason, but it makes it a fair negotiation.
Any other questions? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, line, what is this, 543120, the music licenses?
Yeah, so when we've had this for years, when we have band concerts, if we use music and promotional videos, stuff like that, we are required, and a bunch of municipalities got dinged / sued probably, 10, 15 years ago, Cindy, this was a thing with the music licenses, where, companies representing the performers said, you're not licensed to use this material. So that covers us for the use of licensed products.
Okay.
And that is funded with TIF revenues this year, because typically, the band concerts, things like that, it's outdoor entertainment for the village. So we're trying to get crafty with that.
Any other questions? All right, I guess we can move on. You're off the hook for a little bit.
I'm here. Not going anywhere.
All right, so we'll move on to the town clerk's budget. Oh, no, technology, sorry, I skipped a page. So can
You
we?
want Ted to come up?
Yeah, can we, a lot of people were asking, who's that gentleman back there, so.
Ted, our
Been asked.
new IT director has been with us for a couple months. Come on up.
We'll put him in the
Newest
hot seat.
employee that we make come up here first. The interesting thing with his budget is he came on board right in the middle of the budget season, so we're kind of like, quick, throw it together. But I think fundamentally, you've been trying to get a grasp on our infrastructure, catch up to everything. We do have another IT technician position slated in his department that we have not filled. I think you were trying to get your feet under you, and then we're going to advertise for that. And based on the competitive nature I think we saw for the director position, we're hoping there'll be a lot of viable applicants. So,
That was actually my question, was did we have an IT technician? So
yeah.
you answered my
We
question.
very much need one, based on my experience, and I'm sure you would echo. Sure. Where we are as a municipality is dramatically different than where we were 10, 15 years ago.
So my other question is, I know it says software repairs and maintenance, like in this budget, but then also in all the other budgets, because it's for different departments, like police department, things like that. I just was wondering, this line here, it doesn't cover any other departments. They're all broken out, is that correct?
So this line item has to do with things that affect the town as a whole, whereas like, let's say the police department, they have specialty software. They purchase that themselves.
Okay,
A big one in there would be, correct me if I'm wrong, are like Microsoft licenses, Munis.
Yes, Munis.
Munis is very expensive. That's one of the big ticket ones, but yeah, town-wide software.
any questions for our new technology director? Go ahead.
I do actually have one, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot at all, but I just I'm curious. Certainly, a concern for municipalities to be aware of is cybersecurity, and I'm just curious to your assessment thus far. Are we budgeting enough to have us in a secure position as best we can?
Absolutely. So part of the software line item has to deal with an email filter that I just purchased. I'm still working with the vendor to implement it, but it has to do with our email filter and cybersecurity training as well for all staff.
That's great. Thank you.
We've had generic cybersecurity training for years. When I say generic, like just the training that all staff have to take. One thing we've talked about is doing a little bit, it's not super expensive, but doing, software programs that will actually try to identify the employees that are the weakest link. And I know other businesses and municipalities do that sends out phishing emails that are actually from the town, trying to get people to click on it. And then if we determine that we have a repeat issue, we can address it with the employee and make sure those weak links are identified.
And that's exactly what I purchased.
Yeah, that's great. And support it. It's not like a gotcha thing. It's like
Support them. I mean, if it
Right.
happened 10 times, yeah, we'd be like, okay, we have a problem here. But yeah, a learning experience that this is what to look out for. And
Yeah.
it's getting more sophisticated, as I'm sure
yeah.
you're seeing in your own lives. And I'm not picking on any staff here. They all know.
No, definitely not. Definitely not. No. It's
But
yeah.
we've had attacks on our system. I think
Yeah.
over the years we've had not substantial breaches, but minor
Yeah.
access breaches, but are usually the individual, not necessarily the system, from my understanding.
Yeah.
Also, the implementation of two-factor authentication, which my predecessor did, is also plays a big role in mitigating that.
Yeah. And I think that's great. I mean, I think that's a smart investment, and I'm not trying to, I mean, humans are the easiest point of error in any one of these systems. So it's about us supporting our staff and making sure we have the resources. It's a smart investment for the long term.
The one thing I'll say, Rob, real briefly is we shared IT with the school department in the past. It didn't work great, and it's not a reflection of the school department or the school department employees. They have their own focus. And our focus is dramatically different. Our infrastructure is dramatically different. I mean, every police cruiser has cameras and a recording system and the computers and our fire trucks. I mean, it's just totally different. So we've seen over the years the need for us to be able to manage and maintain our own infrastructure while working with the schools that's there. That need is there.
Yep, go ahead.
So I've mentioned this to the town manager in the past. I'm hoping to bring this here too. I would love to see, in the name of cybersecurity, us move to a .gov domain name as well over the next year, in terms of scams and whatnot. Anyone can have a .org. It's way harder to get a .gov, and so.
Yeah, and we're actually, so the .org is just for the public-facing website. Our emails are .me.us.
Right.
Yeah.
But it'd be good for us to get.
We could
that
move
as
to a .gov as well. One of the projects that I'm focusing on is cleaning up our domain, organizational domain, because it's a bit scattered. So I had to consolidate, and I think moving to a .gov would be a smart move as well.
Cool. Thank you.
All right. I guess you're off the hook now. Thank you very much. Nice to meet you. All right, we'll move on to the town clerk.
So, I mean, Lori's making our lives easier. She's bringing in a 2.6% decrease on the operating side of her budget.
I wasn't going to question that, so I wasn't going to ask any questions. I was
I'd like
just
to
going to say,
highlight it.
thank you. All right. Anyone have any questions? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. This might be a question for combined both of you. How much do we rely on excise taxes? And if there is a sudden change in less, car buying with price increases, how much might that mess with our budget?
I'm going to answer that in two parts. So there's a bill in the state or the legislature right now to basically repeal excise tax. I don't think it's going to go anywhere and do a per mile system. And they would send all the revenue to the state. That's why I think it's going to die, because municipalities will be like, over my dead body. With regards to people buying vehicles, I think Lori can speak to what she's seen. Vehicles aren't getting any cheaper. So excise tax is based on the sticker price of the vehicle, and obviously it scales back. I think even if you see less vehicles, you may see the revenue stream slow, but Gorham is a growing municipality. We're not growing at the pace that everyone thinks we're growing, but we're still growing. And typically a new residence brings at least one, maybe two vehicles with it, not to mention commercial growth. So I think that any reduction in new vehicle sales, we may see a decrease. I mean, you still have leases and you still have to register them. And I think Lori can speak to what she's been seeing in the office.
Actually, within the last month, it's skyrocketed with new vehicle purchases, yeah. And we've had a couple different businesses come to town that bought out other businesses in other towns and bringing their vehicles into Gorham.
Okay. Thank you.
But the other thing I point out, and I mentioned in the revenue, is we're conservative enough that I think any craziness that we may see just at the federal level or tariffs or whatever should still be within what we've budgeted for revenue, even if there was a dramatic drop or decrease in new vehicles.
Got it. Thank you.
Any other questions? Lori, I was just going to ask you, just making sure, because the rental of, like, related equipment, is that the ballot machines?
Boxes, yeah,
Okay,
we
yeah.
just had them last year.
Okay, so you don't think we need to,
Probably not. till
not for,
4 more years.
okay,
Yeah.
yep,
Or 2 maybe.
We may, gubernatorial election, we may
okay,
want to look at that, but, yeah,
Okay.
presidential obviously is just through the roof.
yeah,
Processing the ballots. And I think for the public, absentee ballots are still, even if you don't go vote in person, the absentee ballot is still put through a machine. And it still takes a clerk to put the ballot in the machine, have it processed and counted. So, how many do you have in here for the presidential election?
9,000.
Yeah, 9,000, yeah.
okay. All right. Questions? You guys, we're going to rip right through this. We might not make it to lunch. All right. Thank you, Lori.
Thanks, Lori. You saving your energy for the silver bullets?
I think that's what we're doing. All right. So we're going to move on to, this is Tom's area? Okay. Community development. Make sure Tom's had enough coffee, and then he can come up and, by the way.
Morning.
Morning.
Tom, do you want to introduce yourself for the camera?
Sure. Tom Poirier, Director of Community Development.
So Tom's departments, Tom is over planning, economic development, code, and assessing. I guess I don't think there's substantial expenditure changes proposed in Tom's departments, but we have upped the TIF revenue offsets for parts of positions. So that's why you'll see these notes at the bottom of the page. Economic development, their entire budget is paid for with TIF revenues. Parts of planning, parts of code. I don't know, parts of assessing, we did a little this year as well. So the bigger changes that you'll actually see is the revenue side.
All right, so I think what we'll do is, we'll be on page 22, so that we're in the planning section, since there's so many parts. I just had a quick question, because I know this kind of goes to code and assessing, but they share an administrative assistant, correct? Code and assessing, or is it planning and code? I'm confused.
Yeah, that's a good question. So relatively recently, we restructured, if you remember the office before, it used to be assessing half and then a code half, right? So when you went in there, there was one admin that helped assessing and one helped code. Well, with assessing being kind of given or contracted with Cumberland County, the need for a dedicated standalone assessing admin wasn't there anymore. So we looked to restructure that. We did that this year. So now there will be one title for admin, but they'll both help assessing and they'll both help code. So we're going to train them so they can be cross-trained and they can do both tasks. So we have one person in that position currently, and we have a new one starting Monday
Okay.
on the other side. So we're fully staffed for that. So we had to restructure it because we were losing staff too much because of turnover and because of the job duties. So we looked to restructure that.
Okay.
And then what traditionally was the administrative assistant in planning is the office manager over all those admins.
Okay, yep.
That's why you see a slight difference there in
Okay.
the salary.
And we just hired a new community admin, so Nina took the new job as economic development specialist, so we just hired someone for that position from Pennsylvania that will be starting in the middle of the month, so.
Okay. Any questions on the planning section? All right. We can move on to assessing.
So I'll preempt this one. So
Yep.
I know
You
where
know what
this
I'm going to
might-
say.
I know where it's going to go.
Okay,
There has been the county manager's been harassing me pretty persistently, and I was waiting until after this budget workshop to get back to him, but we do need to renew the contract for Cumberland County. That'd be a separate discussion, a separate meeting, probably next month with council. What I will say is I think from my perspective, and I think everybody has a different perspective based on where they're sitting, we've seen a lot of improvements at the county since the assessor position has changed over. Is it a perfect system compared to having an in-house assessor? No. Do I feel confident that we could go out and attract a viable, inexperienced in-house assessor? No. Market is horrible for assessors right now, and Cumberland County has seen that. They have struggled to keep a good assessor. And I don't think that's just the size of the organization. I think we're seeing that as a profession. So if anybody's listening and wants to get in the assessing world, there's some opportunities there. But that's something I think, regardless of the budgeted amounts here, the council will have to have a separate conversation of renewing that contract with Cumberland County probably next month.
And that was my question, so. Go ahead.
Yeah, along this line, I mean, I'm seeing 195,000. If we were to do it in-house, would it be one in-house assessor? Do you think we'd need two?
So I've asked that question. I've even asked that question. I've had some frank conversations with our Cumberland County assessor. Thought about stealing some Cumberland County assessors at some points, but that's harder than it is to actually do in real life. But I think Gorham's size, it would be a lot for one assessor. We might be able to get away with it, but you might need a little bit extra help, either a part-time person or work with another town or something. I'm not saying it couldn't happen. We would still have to, if we ever had to do a reval, that still has to happen outside the organization. It's just too big. And Cumberland County, in their revised contracts, not just for Gorham, if we adopt going with the county again, they put a provision in there that if we do another reval or any municipality does a reval, there's a little extra charge to hire somebody to help the assessor manage that project. Because what they found is, not necessarily for Gorham, but I know Falmouth was a heavy lift for them. There was a lot of appeals, a lot of coastal and commercial properties, and they've had a lot of turmoil in other municipalities with revals. It just kills their staff.
And a large part of that cost is from property owners challenging the revaluations.
Yeah, and it's a time suck for the employees, and not to say that they should not put the effort into it. It's just it takes them away from everything else that they're doing. So, especially if Cumberland County has 2 or 3 revals going on at any given time, smaller towns, bigger towns, it's a lot for them to handle. And it would be the same for us. I mean, we would have to hire another company when we have to do it, and it would still be a drain on our resources even if we had an in-house assessor.
So just because you mentioned the word reval, can you just be clear that we're not doing one of those?
No, I will say it is in a larger, growing, and I say growing in a positive light. There's plenty of municipalities that don't grow and are dying. But in a municipality like Gorham's situation, it is better for the taxpayer to have a reval more frequently. And I'm not saying we're doing one anytime soon. But if you wait 10, 15 years between revals, it is much worse than if you do them, every, I don't know, probably 5 to 8 years for a quorum-sized community.
Okay, thank you. I didn't want anyone in the public hearing you say the word. And
No, there's no one, right now our certified ratio is healthy. We're at 100%, but there's some municipalities that can't even get to 70%, the state minimum.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Go ahead.
On the 13% increase for the contracted services, is that like a fixed increase that we know is happening, or is that projecting that we stay with Cumberland County and you're expecting an increase based on a new contract?
That's the new contract increase. It's not 13% every year. It's typically like 3 or 4% after that. So it would be, there's a bump this year. Yeah. The last 3, we've been with the county since I started. So this will be, I think they've maintained 3 or 4% almost every year, like clockwork, since we started with them.
And you were talking about an assessor. Do you have any idea, there's more than one assessor for the for Cumberland County?
Oh, yes.
And
So-
we have one dedicated to us?
Yeah, it's not, Rob Sutherland is the head assessor, and there's, I think there's 5, I could be wrong on that number, assessors under Rob. So they have plenty of assessors to service the municipalities, but if we did one in-house ever, it would be 1.5 assessors is probably what we would need.
Thank you.
Any other questions on assessing? All right, we can move on to the code.
So, really not substantial changes. We had a adjustment in the pay structure for code. It's been reflected there, but I believe it's the building inspector's position is partially offset by TIF revenues, but again, no substantial changes in the code department.
Are we fully staffed in this department?
Yes.
Okay. Other
Well,
questions?
we have Deepak,
Miles?
Miles.
Partially, couple days a
Partially
week.
back. I mean,
yeah.
we're staffed, we're fully staffed, but we had somebody out for a little bit.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. Any other questions? Go ahead.
I'll ask another one here. Looking at the major equipment costs, this one doesn't necessarily have to be in this question, but when we had gotten those vehicles and now we're looking at they're like 5 years old, is there a lifespan? Will those be replaced? What happens?
Well, what we used to do was there was a bunch of hand-me-down vehicles, and typically they were the worst of the worst vehicles that came out of PD, that might have gone to fire, that might have gone to Public Works, and then just before we sent them off for scrap, they ended up at the code office. The vehicles you're referring to was the Volkswagen settlement. The state got a bunch of money. We got a bunch of free leases and heavily subsidized vehicles that we bought out the leases on. And I think we have 9 electric vehicles right now. 2 are dedicated to the code office. I think in a perfect world, Public Works would have liked to, there's unknowns with the batteries, and they're very low mileage. So, I mean, if you really think about it, they're just driving around town for the most part. I mean, they go out occasionally, but most of the vehicles have less than 5,000 miles on them, and they're 5 years old because they're just driving in town. For our uses, they're great. I don't know. Eventually, if we see problems with the vehicles, I think our experience has been having low-maintenance dedicated vehicles for some of the departments has been very beneficial because you don't see high maintenance costs. We're not burdening Public Works with trying to keep the old rundown vehicles on the road that are breaking down all the time, or the seats worn out because an officer with a duty belt sat in it all the time. And now I have employees, they can't drive it because of health issues. So it's something we will look at, but if they are replaced in the future, it'll be very cost-effective vehicles. Maybe leased electric vehicles, or maybe just really cheap gas vehicles. Would that be a fair assessment, Tom?
Yeah, that's where I put a plug in for electric Mustang for the code office.
All right, any other questions for code? All right, so the next page is the municipal center building budget.
Thank you, Mr. Porter.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
If I skip-
We're on
oh,
page
yeah.
27.
Want to bring Kevin up?
Should you want to bring him up now or later, or? I have lots of questions
He's
for
got a
Kevin.
bunch. I could talk about this, and then if
Okay.
we have questions for Kevin, with our facilities director, we can go from there. Basically, operation of the municipal center is what this boils down to. No dramatic changes. I think Kevin has done Kevin and his team, meaning Kevin, have, I throw Chuck in there. Chuck's in the same office and helps out quite a bit, as well as other departments, but has done a lot more with less compared to where we used to be. We've had very frank conversations that I think the town has, even in this budget and past budgets, used encumbrances, leftover funding, and/or parts of capital projects to do items that should be maintenance. And we should be, and this is my fault as much as anybody else's, incrementally increasing our maintenance, because our buildings are also getting older. Like this building's at 20 years since the last renovation, and it's starting to show its age. But the preventative maintenance within the facilities, if we can do it, it's going to save a lot of money. But, I mean, there's not like high-ticket items here. I mean, we can talk about natural gas and electricity if you want. But Kevin did, I'll point out why I'm thinking of it. Kevin replaced, who's also a master electrician, with help. These are all LEDs now. I don't know if you noticed, the ceiling tiles don't look like they're caving in on you. There's no stains in the ceiling. And we're chasing some money to retrofit this building with grant funds. Hopefully we get it. This building actually doesn't have a lot of LEDs in it. The payback doing it ourselves has not been great. I think one of the times we looked at it was like 11 years. But if we can get some grant funding, it's more cost effective.
Thank you. You know, my favorite line in the budget is the building maintenance for all the buildings, so
That's why I
that's
was
why.
trying to
Yep.
give
so-
you an opportunity to jump on it.
The only question I have, obviously, because our contracted services, that's the cleaning for this building, is that correct, or is that other things too?
I think that's mostly the cleaning. Am I correct? Or did we change it?
Contracted services also include like sprinkler inspections.
Sprinkler,
Oh, okay.
elevator.
Okay,
Contracted out for inspections.
okay. I just was wondering about the cleaning contract. I know we do that every so often, or is that up, or I can't remember when we did
I
that.
don't know the last time we,
2027.
Okay,
right now, it's better than it has been, I would say. We have a good employee through that contract that does a very good job.
yep. I just was curious when the date was.
But we've had some ups and downs with that over the years. Like,
Yes,
even when the school was managing it, I mean, the school employees were about ready to riot one year in the building. It was bad, but I think it's better than it has been. It's still more cost effective than us hiring somebody.
yes. Any questions in this section?
Could you clarify for those watching at home? You said Kevin and Chuck. Who are they? What roles do they do?
Don't really know. Kevin Wood is our facilities director. He may come up at some point. Came on board 2 years ago? A year, 2, 3, 4? Year ago. And has done wonders. And Chuck Norden, our town engineer. The other thing that's worth, and I'll send it out in an email to the council, they did have offices made of file cabinets for a while up in what used to be the old classrooms / meeting rooms on the second floor. Kevin has found some very cost-effective modular offices that were just installed last week. So IT and Kevin and Chuck will be all in one office now up there, which is pretty nice, so they can all work together, and they'll be next to school IT. Finance is also going to have a home up there, couple weeks, month or so. When their modular offices come in, it'll free up space down there for the clerks.
Oh, okay. Any other questions? And then there's the old rec building. We can just mention, this is a co-op preschool building. If anybody has any questions.
Yeah, it's kind of a token amount. The building will, I think I did cut some capital requests that were in the budget that didn't make it, but I think it's a stout building. We put a roof on that last summer, I believe. So it's, I mean, the building's sound. It's just upkeep. We're gonna have to maintain it.
All right, so we can move on to general assistance.
So I did decrease this a little bit based on where we had been. As the council is aware, we're legally obligated to provide general assistance, whether we budget $1 or $1 million. The state does provide partial reimbursement for our expenditures to date. It looks like they've been, just looking at the historical trends, I'm guessing they might be leveling off, but it's just hard to guess what's going on. All it really takes is a family or two to move into Gorham that needs housing or a lot of assistance, and that can just skyrocket. It is 100% eligibility based by state law, so it's not like it's discretionary on the part of the general assistance administrator, who is contracted with Wyndham. Rennie Daniels does a great job. I think Rennie will be there for another year or two, and we're still looking to maintain that relationship with Wyndham and Gorham. It seems right now our size and general assistance needs still works. At some point, if we grow and Wyndham grows, it may have to be separated, but right now it's working and we're saving money that way.
Just out of curiosity, just because we do give money to the Health Council, do we just, I know it's the flat amount, do we just cut them a check, or do they use it for something? Or I'm just wondering, just because it is the equal amount that we've already
Do
paid
we
out.
cut a check, Cindy? I'm just gonna yes and a no.
Okay.
When they order supplies, wheelchairs, walkers,
Okay,
knee strollers,
okay,
that goes to.
okay, so it goes to medical closet supply type things?
I mean, it's really a token amount. The bang for the buck too is the medical closet, as
Yeah.
you all know,
Yeah.
is
Yep.
very used in Gorham. We did, at the request of the food pantry, we've increased their allocation. Obviously, they provide a great service to the community.
Okay, so you did receive a request from the
Yeah.
food pantry, okay.
We do receive random requests from random, or I want to say random, groups and organizations that work in and around Gorham for funding every year. Gorham, and I think a lot of other municipalities don't necessarily fund those. Some municipalities do, they'll fund everything to the tune of a lot of money, but generally speaking, it's our direct relationship organizations, that Food Pantry, Lions Club, things like that, that we, Snowmobile Club, that we directly fund or help offset their costs.
Any questions on this section?
If you could just clarify, the general assistance is the one that is based on the state law.
Yeah.
But we also, as a municipality, collect money, like for holiday or fuel assistance or something, and that's through the clerk's office, or
Yes, what's that?
or adopt a
Yeah,
family?
we
or-
don't budget money for it. We have some funds. We get, I think we have a fuel fund. Do we have another fund?
There was a Christmas.
Well, we have Christmas, and the clerk's office organizes the toy drive usually and adopts families. And then occasionally we'll get random donations, like please apply this to the place of greatest need in the town. And it typically goes to stuff like that. We don't bring it to the council. If we get a $500 check and Sharon says, where do we apply this? I'll say, to the fuel fund or something that's more discretionary.
Thank you.
But general assistance is 100%, you're eligible, you're not eligible. It's very, very much to, I think, the displeasure of some people that apply often and get angry. It's a numbers thing. It's not anything to do with the individual. It's what's your income, where do you live, how many people in the house, what is an eligible expense, boom, 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 boom.
Just one little idea that popped into my head, and maybe just something worth a discussion, like with the food pantry. I mean, I fully support increasing the amount here for the budget. I think that's great. It might be worth a conversation with them where it could be we could try to arrange it where the town will put in X amount, and they could use it like a fundraising opportunity to get like matching investments from individuals in the community. So, we could be like, hey, the town will put in up to $5,000 or possibly even more if we can get, matching contributions of a certain percentage. Or that might be something worth a conversation with them about.
I think it's definitely within the realm of anything the council can do. You could double that amount and have the additional 5,000 be matching, or it's 100% up to the council. And really, these items, your $5,000 donation to the food pantry, it's $5,000 is a lot of money, but in the scheme of the municipal budget, it's not.
I'm going to look to somebody that knows about the food
I'd speak to
pantry.
that too. So I'm a board member of the food pantry, and I audit the financials on a monthly basis. And I would just say for the public, we have a very generous community. There are a number of citizens that auto deduct every month from what they get paid. There's donations that come in every month. There's some that just do lump sums every year. So I think the food pantry's challenge is three things: rising food costs, rising demand in terms of the public. You know, if you drive by on a Thursday, there's a long line of cars there that get there pretty early now. And then the building itself needs some maintenance. That you know, has been a little bit neglected. They've done a really good job with the general upkeep, but that's getting a little bit older. It's a modular unit, so there are some areas for improvement there. So I think that was the general ask that came from the pantry, so.
All right, anything else?
Try one more.
Okay, go ahead.
And the following agencies that requested funding, and I understand about, I mean, I come from a town meeting tradition, so I know about these types of things. Lifelight Foundation seems to me to be different from most of the others. Do we use Lifelight, or is that part of, do they get billed if they're used?
I think you get billed. If I say something that's incorrect, we can bring the chief up. I think Gorham has used Lifelight, but nowhere near the frequency of towns like a Naples or Bridgeton or a Baldwin, where your transport time is substantial compared to a Gorham. Was that correct, Chief? Yeah, and we have used them, we're so close. By the time you land the helicopter, package the patient, get the patient on the helicopter, you could have driven to the trauma center. So I think that's the difference in Gorham. Not saying it's not a benefit for Gorham to be able to call them, but it's different than a rural community.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Thank you.
All right, we will move on to, I have a sticky note on it, so it's the police department, I think. All right. Will the chief come up?
And if the council, I should put the disclaimer, if you want breaks, you know, whatever, just say, this
We're on
is
a
not a
roll.
very formal.
We're on a roll.
Yeah. Chief, thanks for coming. Morning. This is gonna work. So we have Chief Sanborn here. The substantial change that you'll see is basically in the salaries. This is a reflection of bringing the remaining costs of the SROs, about $277,000, give or take, from basically what the school paid into the municipal budget. Besides, the cost is not different for the whole town. It helps the school bring in a lower mill rate impact. We're able to offset a lot of our operating expenditures with TIF funds. I'm not paying for these SROs with TIF funds, but I am offsetting other municipal police expenditures with TIF funds for other officers. It does give us a little bit more control, and I think the chief could talk about that if you want him to. And really, at the end of the day, they are municipal employees. They are law enforcement officers, and sometimes they have to focus on law enforcement outside of the schools in emergencies as well. So, but that's, I would say, the most substantial change. I think, like many of our departments, I asked them to bring in as modest of an increase as possible this year, given some of the tax burdens the town's had overall in past years. But happy to talk about any specifics, and the chief can answer questions.
So just for clarifying purposes for the SROs, generally what has happened in the past, is it that we generally pay them throughout the year and then get paid back by the school department?
That
Is
was
that?
an internal transfer that takes place,
Okay,
but yeah.
okay. I just want to make
But
sure.
this is shown, this now reflects in the operating budget, the expenditure for the SROs.
Okay, that's what I just wanted to make sure.
Yep.
Any other questions, comments? Go ahead.
I was just curious, in the budget, there's something about K-9 supplies, and if there's a K-9 officer, would they just be generally listed in a full-time position, or would that be separated out?
No, they'd be included in the regular police officer line. This simply is funds that are available for care of the canine, equipment needs, food, that sort of thing.
Okay, and do we currently have a K-9 officer?
We
Thank
do.
you.
Dog food's gone up as well.
It has, unfortunately.
And the other change I was noticing was, I know our part-time animal control officer retired.
Oh, I should have mentioned that, sorry.
So, so now we have a full-time, is that correct?
Yeah, we're in the midst of filling that position. We have a candidate that's in the final stages of the hiring process, but we have made that a full-time position. It's something that we had discussed internally for a couple of years now because we've seen an increase in calls for service for animal-related complaints. And we felt that this was a good time to do that with the retirement of our previous animal control officer.
So, and just for the public, because I get this question all the time, like the animal control officer handles domestic animals and things like that. And I guess maybe if you could just let the public know right now while we're talking about this, not calling the animal control officer for like wild animals, I guess, is the...
Yeah, so the responsibility of the animal control officer is to manage assistance with domestic animals such as dogs, cats, that sort of thing. And if there's a need for assistance with wildlife, the best resource is the Maine Warden Service. Not to say that if we receive a call in regards to a situation that's going on with, a non-domesticated animal, that we won't assist with that the best that we can and point them in the right direction. But primarily, that's not their responsibility.
Thank you.
The one thing I wanted to mention with the animal control officers, I think we've been very fortunate in the past to have an employee that was able to make the part-time position work. And besides the increasing volume, I think the town delayed that, making that full-time a lot longer than we should have. But for that employee that worked, they made it work. But it's very clear, given our size in other municipalities, that one, we probably could not hire a part-time person. And then two, if we did, they'd probably quit based on the call volume. So we really need somebody dedicated 40 hours or more towards that. It's long overdue.
Any other questions? Go ahead.
Sorry, one statement and then two questions.
Sure.
Sorry. First one is, I appreciate bringing the SROs into this budget. It makes sense. It's all still taxpayer money, all in the same pool. My first question is, so I think it's been about a year since we've hired the full-time community liaison. How's that been working out? How have those calls been dealt with? What's been the impact there?
So we've struggled with filling that position, to be quite frank with you. The funding was available. We've gone through a couple of hiring processes. We're actually conducting interviews to fill that position this coming Tuesday. I was quite pleased to see the number of applicants that we received and good quality applicants. So I'm feeling confident about this hiring process. We were interviewing, I think it's 5 or 6 candidates for that position this coming Tuesday. What we've been doing in the meantime is previous to us receiving funding for the full-time position, we had a contracted service that we shared services with the liaison in Wyndham. Mm-hmm. That I made an agreement with the chief in Wyndham. We have a great working relationship with Wyndham Police Department, and we've been able to utilize services from that liaison in the interim. So that has just continued in the meantime until we get our position filled full-time.
Awesome, okay. And then my other question, so roughly either 1 or 2 years ago, we were talking about marked and unmarked cruisers. And you specifically mentioned you actually don't like unmarked cruisers. You prefer them to be marked, but our numbers haven't shifted. Do you want to see more or less unmarked cruisers in Gorham? Is that shift going to happen at any point?
So for clarification purposes, when we were talking about the marked cruisers, I was specifically speaking about the cruisers that are assigned to the patrol division and to the school resource officers. My predecessor went to low-profile cruisers for patrol and for the school resource officers. As soon as I took over as chief, we actually changed the lettering on the exterior of the cruisers and put light bars on them for visibility purposes, and to make sure that folks were aware that we were in the communities doing the work that we need to be doing, right? The reason that those numbers haven't changed is that we still do have some unmarked cruisers. As an example, I have an unmarked cruiser, and a couple of other administrators have unmarked cruisers. Unmarked cruisers are assigned to the detective division for obvious reasons. So that's why that number hasn't changed in the department profile. But the cruisers that are assigned to patrol and to the school resource officers are fully marked cruisers.
Does everyone, or does the entire council know what the ghost lettering is, or like the low-profile lettering? So if you take a cruiser that's black and the lettering's black, it's still there, but it's like barely there and you can't really see it. I personally agree with the chief's interpretation that patrol officers that you want to be seen and be visible, the scheme was changed. But you see a lot of other police departments doing it. You see some municipal and school departments doing it. But I think if you have a marked vehicle, it's marked, and if it's unmarked, it's unmarked. But the public should be able to recognize that it's a police cruiser if they need it.
Part of deterrence of crime is visibility, right? And presence in the community. So that's one of the reasons why the first thing I did when I became chief was change the lettering.
So when you say unmarked here, they're completely unmarked.
They
They're
are.
not the ghost lettering.
Yeah, they're equipped with emergency equipment like lights and siren, but they're completely low profile. You wouldn't be able to tell without looking at them closely that they were, police cruisers per se.
Some municipalities, some county departments like Cumberland County provide take-home cruisers. Although it comes up every time we negotiate a contract, although we would love to be able to provide that, when you have 30 full-time positions, give or take, it's 30 cruisers plus the vehicle fleet maintenance, spares, it's just astronomically expensive. I would love to do it. Maybe we'll get there someday, but that's why the number of vehicles really hasn't changed.
No, it hasn't.
Yeah. We replace 2 every year, but they're hand-me-downs to other departments, and then we phase them out.
And just lastly, I'd love for you all, as you're continuing to upgrade, I have seen some police departments move to specifically the Mach-E electric vehicle. It is a Mustang sub-brand, so if you all use it and like it, and then eventually it gets passes down to department, can eventually make its way to community development. But I legitimately have seen some police departments using electric vehicles, and in terms of the the savings of, well, it's really a lot of the maintenance. It would be good if you at least explored it, if it were an option.
It's worth mentioning, we have started buying a couple of years ago hybrids. Before they were pure gas, followed in the footsteps of, was it Falmouth was kind of pushing that?
Yeah, Falmouth was pushing the hybrids, and that's one of the things that I discussed with the manager when I first took over as chief, was moving in that direction. And since I've taken over, all the cruisers that we have purchased have been hybrids.
I will not promise, but we are always willing to look at stuff like that. A fundamental problem with an purely electric vehicle, though, is it's fine for like our code officers because they plug them in at night. A lot of our cruisers, not all of them, one officer gets in, one officer gets out, or one gets out, one gets in, and it's like that. There are spares, but there's logistical challenges, but I think it's worth looking at.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Can you speak to, I know people have asked me this question in the back before about the opioid settlement, about what we do with those funds. I know we have it here in our book, but if you could just, I don't know if the manager wants to speak to that or.
Excellent question, thank you. I get this all the time, like we're hiding it or we're spend it on an electric car or something. We use well, when we get a person in the position, it is offsetting basically the cost of the community liaison position. So the salary, the benefits, all that. That is, a lot of municipalities went that route. Some went more for direct treatment intervention. Some went the other direction and just bought equipment for their police department. I think we split we found the middle ground, and I think it, in my opinion, is a good use of the funding if you can find the right person for the job. And I'll give kudos to the police department. They have not just hired the first person that came along. They're trying to find the right fit.
Okay.
That's been our philosophy in hiring, period.
And on that note, are we fully staffed at this point, or police
So
officers?
we are not at this point. We're down one position. We have one vacancy. We're actually conducting one interview on Monday for that position. Once that position is filled, I'm happy to say that we'll be at full staff.
Okay.
Congratulations.
Yeah, I was
Thank
gonna
you.
say, yay. Yeah. So, any other questions? All right, I think that's it. Thank you. Does anybody want to take a break? Should we take a break? Okay.
It's up to you guys.
You want to do a 5-minute break? Okay.
Yeah, I guess.
All right.
5-minute
All right.
break.
Seven
All
decided.
right, 5-minute break, Georgia. Start with the Fire Rescue Department. Chief Fickett.
Thank you. She said Chief Fickett, but then
I did, but
realized
then I
it was
didn't
my
know who's
cue to
talking,
speak,
so go ahead.
Big difference, I guess, in this budget is obviously the inclusion of the 4 additional positions. One thing I'll point out, and we've yet to resolve it internally, but if some of these numbers look a little skewed, some of the per diem and call company and full-time salaries have been miscoded, and we're trying to dive into that, into the wrong accounts. We have not spent more than what's been allocated in this year's budget, but that's why some of these numbers might be a little off. But essentially, the 4 additional positions would be funded with TIF revenue. We also are funding a percentage, a small percentage, I don't have the spreadsheet in front of me, 10 or 15% of the chiefs, plural, salaries out of TIF for the work that they have to do for those districts. So I'm happy to answer any questions, and the chief's here as well to answer any questions. Well, the other thing I should point out is we're currently trying to wrap up a years-long contract negotiations with our collective bargaining group, the Teamsters and the fire department. So we're very optimistic that that will be coming to I keep saying that, coming to the council very soon. I think it will be coming to the council very soon. They've got a new group of people from the bargaining unit that have taken over, and they're very motivated to sign a contract. So hopefully that'll happen soon.
Okay. I do have a question. Student live-ins, we don't have any, do we?
We do have some.
Okay.
We, I want to say we've got 12 or 14.
Oh, wow, okay.
But they are getting very scarce.
Yes.
I think last I checked, there was 35 new students coming on board, and there's like 17 communities rallying for those students. When it first started, like 30 years ago or more, when Mike Nault was one of our first students, there was only 3 towns that did this program, and there was always an abundance of students. Now it's not quite the case.
That's why I was surprised. I thought you were going to say there were 4 or something, so.
No, we
That's
have
good.
4 at Central, 2 at West Gorham, 3 at Little Falls, 2 at North Gorham, and White Rock Station's been vacant.
Okay.
So as the council is probably aware, I think over 70% of the call volume in the fire department is medical related. We have 3 ambulances, 1 on order to replace 1. And that's the majority of the call volume, and the chief can correct me if I'm wrong on any of this, but as we have discussed in many workshops and council meetings over the years, as communities grow and just in general in the world, there are less and less people that are volunteering, quote unquote, as call company members. We'd still pay them. That pool of individuals is diminishing. That's why you're seeing a lot of municipalities having to hire more people full-time and or per diem. The per diem pool is not even as strong as it used to be, as far as there's not enough people in the profession for all the municipalities that have the need. And I think the chiefs struggle with this all the time, trying to provide that staffing.
So I'm just going to assume, because that's why the overtime line is so much this past year, was because we don't have enough people, so we're using the staff we have.
That was because of the open positions that we had, and we had a rash of 2 or 3 that would leave to another town that was higher wages, and we have to cover those shifts that they exited from. We're currently only down one position, and we're actively seeking somebody in that position, which that person left and went to Cumberland.
Okay.
On that point, I think a struggle that a Gorham-sized municipality has is we have a fair amount of call volume, like thousands of calls a year, and you have not just the coastal communities, but some of the coastal communities can afford to pay as competitive, if not a more competitive wage, and their people run fewer calls. So the example that the chief just gave, you can go to a town and run half, if not just 1/3 the amount of calls and be woken up in the middle of the night less frequently and get paid the same amount of money, if not more, than a Gorham. So I think that's another reason that there's pressure here.
One medic that left, he left to go to 1,000 calls a year, and we're at 3,400 calls a year. And he was upwards of $2 to $3 more an hour.
So if you can spread that call volume across more people, it's more beneficial to the organization, and then obviously you get a better response too. You're not getting somebody that's just picking up a call, coming right back from the hospital, hasn't even done their paperwork, or restock the ambulance from the last call, so on. So
Makes sense.
that wasn't staged. So.
Any other questions?
I don't know if now would be the time or later, but I'm just curious about the life expectancy of ambulances, fire trucks, some of those big ticket items that I think at least one comes up.
Okay, the life expectancy of an ambulance is, we're trying to get 12 years. 12. Okay, the life expectancy of a fire truck itself is 25 years. We get more than 25 out of fire trucks. The problem is with the ambulances, at 12 years, it could be the mileage in the condition of the actual chassis, not necessarily the box on the back. It's the chassis. As you'll see in Capital Part 2, we have a chassis in there. The fact that we're hitting now is we ordered the fire truck, it's 2.5 years away. We ordered the ambulance, it's 3 years away. So and it never used to be that way. It used to be a year to a year and 4 months. Now it's upwards of years. And I don't know what's going to happen with the current 2 vehicles that are on order, with the new tariffs that are flying around and all that stuff. It could devastate us, depending on what piece of the puzzle is put in these trucks. I don't know. It's a unknown at this point in time.
Another thing I would add to that, I think everything the chief said is spot on. You basically try to get the most life you can out of anything. Vehicles that are used every day, all day, like an ambulance, are going to wear and tear a lot more than a tank truck that is only going to so many calls, alarms, structure fires, all that. That being said, there has been a lot of work at the county level amongst municipalities to try to work for solutions to a lot of these problems, because it used to be you had the volunteer forces and the staffing to get a lot of these trucks on the road. You may not have that anymore. So when the chief will come in to me and say, I want to replace X vehicle, another component that the department has to defend with me, and I'm sure with the council, if we ever get one on the budget again, is should we even be replacing that vehicle? Is the staffing more important than the vehicle? It used to be that, they've always been expensive, but now they're ridiculously expensive.
Right.
What's a new pumper? Over $1 million?
$1 million.
I mean,
1.2 they're looking at right now.
The first ambulance we purchased when I started here was around 200,000. They're about $500,000 now. And obviously, we've all seen that's just what's going on. So we're just going to have to be a lot more strategic with where we're putting the funding in the future.
Just a question, it's an interesting subject. Chief, do you get any sense, the manufacturers of the fire trucks, are they going to be forced to, we're going to have to start building these things a little smaller because it's just too expensive, or they're making money off it, so they're not really, there's no incentive for them to change?
They'll actually build anything you want.
Really?
It's the size and how you need to use that truck makes a difference to size.
Yeah.
Like the latest truck we just had on referendum vote was for 3,000 gallons. And it could be a Class A pumper with 3,000 gallons. So basically, that would be the attack truck. We can do a good number to a fire with 3,000 gallons until we can get more trucks there to be able to supply the water. You'll build anything you want for a price. And my gut feeling is all they're doing is gouging us.
Yeah.
And because they know they've got a piece of equipment that you want.
Yeah, and they got 3 years of
need,
orders.
and you can't do away with them, but every supplier is the same thing. They all know their numbers and stuff like that.
with the two you mentioned that are on order, 2.5 years out and 3 years out, I think you said, are we price locked on those at this time, or is that something that?
We're price locked on everything with the exception of the piece of the terrace, I believe.
Okay.
They do have provisions. There could be some increase, but it's mostly, they can't just say it's an extra 30% on the vehicle. But there's an escalation clause for some components in there.
Yeah.
When they start building it, essentially, like actually putting it together.
The current fire truck, we should be all set with that.
Okay.
We have some contingency in there for that. The ambulance is within $5,000. So if I get whacked with over $5,000 worth of stuff, I'd have to eat that out of the operating budget or out of end of the year monies or somehow.
Other questions? Go ahead.
Thank you. So I've heard rumblings about OSHA changes specifically related to fire departments, but I'm not quite sure, as it's not my expertise, but it sounds like it's been.
I haven't heard much about them lately. I think it's died down with the new administration.
Okay.
I'm not sure where it stands on that piece of the puzzle. Haven't heard anything in a long time,
Okay.
but it could be very devastating to fire departments. Up and including Portland was doing some serious discussions about what it would do to them as well. And they're a full-time department.
When you say what it would do to them, you mean cost-wise or?
Cost-wise and to adhere to the new rules and all that stuff. And it would totally wipe out a true volunteer department. The bigger call companies up, in Rooster County and all that, it would wipe them out.
But currently, it's kind of not hearing anything, so.
Yeah, well, there's
okay.
a lot of opposition throughout the United States on that whole piece of the puzzle. So I'm not sure where they ended up.
But we paint a worrisome picture of public safety, but I want to reassure the council that Gorham and Gorham-sized communities, with the infrastructure, the resources, and the people we have, put us in a better position, like the example you just gave, than a rural community, where everyone's like, we should just regionalize. Well, yes, I mean, Wyndham and a Gorham, for example, that is a much better prospect than a Bridgeton and a Sebago in Cumberland County, because they don't have anything. We have, some capability to do that. So if and when that ever materializes again, I'm more confident that we can weather that storm than a rural municipality.
Got it. And then we might talk about this in capital part 2, but building maintenance, I noticed there's, little amounts for each building, but is this enough? I know that your buildings have specifically.
In my
had
operating
maintenance.
budget,
Yeah.
it's a shoestring operation for building maintenance. Every one of my buildings are 50 years old or better, and they've been neglected in previous years because of just what I get for money in the building maintenance. In capital part 2, myself and Kevin Wood looked at all the buildings and stuff, and we tried to come up with doing some renovations to get them so we can keep them a lot longer. To replace a fire station now is, well, Sanford was $40 million. I don't foresee that coming. I think, we ought to be putting some money into 50-year-old buildings, and we can keep going.
So I like to piggyback on the chief's. It's good because he can lay out the bad, and then I can try to paint a better picture. We will, as a community, and I think the chiefs, chief and his chiefs have had this conversation with me that, there may be a day where we may want to close a station or two. They're not, and I say that, they're not dramatic savings. We might save 30, 40 grand a year in operating expenditures. But in the long-term picture of Gorham, there'll have to be an evaluation, not anytime soon, of some of these smaller stations we have, and is it worth actually keeping them? Because will they serve a purpose in the long term versus before they used to be staffed by call company or students or whatever the case is. So, but before we start dumping money into these buildings, some are in better shape than others. Like West Gorham, we put a lot of money into through grants and federal funds and gift cards and all that. Remember that
gift
whole
cards, yep.
crazy thing. But
Yeah.
White Rock will need some work as well as North Gorham. So it's just, we're going to have those conversations before we start dumping a lot of money into them.
So on that note, do we have equipment at each station or no?
Have what?
Do we have equipment? Do we have like a fire truck at each station?
Have a fire truck in each station, if not two.
Okay,
Some of them have three.
okay. What's the status of North Scarborough, South Gorham?
That is vacant.
Okay,
And to iterate on that, we had the fire yesterday that you all are well aware of. That truck, that station never moved the truck. The truck that was supposed to come out of that station was unmanned. They couldn't find anybody to man it, so they sent the Oak Hill Engine Company instead.
okay.
And that's due to lack of call company members and stuff. So
Yeah.
we have taken that truck out of that station and put it in the Little Falls Wyndham Station to replace the truck that had 6.5 feet of broken frame.
Yep.
Year and a half ago, I think, or whatever. That was 28 years old.
And one other question, and we pay fire, police?
We pay fire, police, just like we pay the call company.
Okay, so that's where it is in here. It's
Yeah, they're under the call company line.
Okay.
The plug out for the fire police and anybody that wants to participate with the fire police, they provide an invaluable service because they free up the other either full-time or per diem slots or call company slots to take other calls. So otherwise you have to have an officer out there or a firefighter, and often they'll get called out as a scene is wrapping up and help provide that resource, as well as any number of other things that they do in the town.
It also helps the PD immensely when we have a car accident, frees up their officers, they can do what they need to do in investigating the scene, doing the measurements and all that, and we close the road.
Yeah, no, I've heard great things from my father-in-law when he's at accident scenes about fire police,
Oh, we
just
help him
handling the
too.
the situation, so. All right, any other questions? All right, now we're going on to the buildings, is that correct? All the fire stations, do you want?
Yeah, I mean, we can keep the chief up here, or if you want to chat with Kevin or the police chief, but essentially we have the police station, central fire station, as well as the smaller stations, North Gorham, West Gorham, and White Rock.
So for all of these buildings, I guess my only question is, just for clarification, the contracted services, is that the cleaning and?
That's sprinkler inspections, fire alarm inspections, anything that we contract to be done.
Okay.
That's a new line that we moved in this year.
Right.
Before, in previous years, it was always in bill of maintenance. So basically, it's going to paint a better picture next year for the council to know exactly what's going on.
Okay, perfect. Any questions on any of these fire stations, police station?
I'll just say again, now you can see some of the smaller stations, operationally, they don't cost us a lot of money to run. It's mostly the kids that are, the students that are in there. But as far as utilities and maintenance, yes, we could maintain them a little better, but they don't cost a lot per year to operate.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was looking at, if you look at, I'm on page 41, and looking at building maintenance for 2024 actual, and then moving from there. Was there something that happened? Were there other funds that it was so
The heat
high?
pump-
and we
The
don't
heat
ask
pump
for-
system let go in Central Station. We lost the heat, and we froze up a couple pipes. There was extensive repairs. We tried to collect insurance. Some of it was insurance, some wasn't. That was basically the gist of the whole,
So it was a specific project?
yeah.
One thing I will make a point of saying, and it's easier to say it here than actually when you're budgeting a project, but the central fire station renovation is a perfect example of the town trying to save a penny at the time, like many municipalities, and then several years later, things blowing up in our face, like the heating system has been a nightmare. We've had supplemental requests to upgrade. We've had several freeze-ups in the building. I think most of that's been resolved, but trying to do it on the cheap is not necessarily the best long-term. Even the police station, which is a relatively good building, we had some freeze-up problems. I have a very fond memory of Chief Lefevre getting up into the ceiling to look at a leak and having a pipe blow up in his face. And it was hilarious. You had to be there. But that was because in the middle of the building, a pipe froze. It's just those small things. So long-term, we try to get ahead of this stuff.
Other questions? Okay, so I'm on page 45. I think we're good. Thank you, Chief Pickett. Page 45 is public utilities.
This is exactly what it sounds like. Streetlight maintenance, signal maintenance, actual costs to pay for electricity, well, the fee for each streetlight that we own. We smartened up a little bit this year, and any hydrant, streetlight, or signal, traffic signal that is within a TIF district is being funded by that district now. So again, looking at a way of how can we offset municipal expenditures. So the town, probably 6-7 years ago now, we spent about 200 grand, give or take, maybe it was more than that, purchasing all of our own streetlights. It's actually worked out pretty well. I don't think we've had many major issues. We've saved a lot of money doing that, and eventually we will have to start replacing them as they burn out, but they're LEDs, they'll last a while. So I think we're still in the good period to not have those burnouts. Any questions on any of this?
All right. I don't think there's any questions on that. Go ahead.
Not a question necessarily, but something that I had learned recently, that when we're driving around town and we're looking at our traffic lights, and we might think that they're state funded, for instance, South Gorham Crossing, to discover what really belongs to us as a town, there's a lot more than I realized.
Yeah, we own all the lights. Some of them were PAC/state funded to get them. The upgrades, like Main Street is a perfect example. I'm not sure if we have any developer. No, we don't have any developer funding in South Street's lights. Those are the original. But yeah, we have to maintain them, and there are control boxes and all that. So I mean, there's really a lot of infrastructures, and you should see the ones on Main Street. You open it up and it looks like a computer server, versus the ones on like South Street. It's all like switches and solenoids and everything. So it's amazing the differences in technology between some of them, just as far as how they even operate.
I did witness the lights changing so that the ambulance or fire trucks could go through town the other day. So that seems to be working out pretty well. I don't think people notice what that means when it flashes on the top, but.
Yeah, so that's the TOMAR at the top. It basically, the emitter picked up, or the receiver picked up an emitter for an emergency vehicle. The police cruisers have them. Some of our plow trucks actually have them, so they don't have to, if you get a good storm, they're not stopping at every light. They're just going right through. We've had some logistical challenges with the lights, how to access them, working with the state. They're still not perfect. So there are improvements planned in the village in the future. The system is not perfect, and we're trying to get in front of it. So.
Any other questions? All right, so we'll move on to page 46, which is contracted services. And obviously, basically the one in here that I see that's going up is the dispatching services, but if you want to talk about how much money that saves us in the long run.
Thank you. I can't actually, we could go back and do the math and do a projection, but as the council is probably aware, Gorham was one of the founding members of what the current the founding member of the what is now the Cumberland County Regional Communications Center. The chief and I sit on the board there. I think it's definitely probably saved the town millions of dollars, especially when you factor in what upgrades in equipment and technology we would have had to self-fund by ourselves. That being said, this year, a portion of that dispatching contract is being taken out of the TIP district because public safety isn't allowed use, and we took out the same percentage that we calculated for other public safety needs from the village based on call volume. And we have a contract for the, contract for the animal shelter. And then radio service, that is the rental on, I forget which tower. Mason Road.
All right, any other questions? Okay, we'll move on to Public Works.
It's always a good one, Public Works. I do want to, the public's maybe watching this later, watching it now. It's snowing right now, and our crews are out plowing the roads, and I want to thank them, for their work on a Saturday, and
Many Saturdays this year.
many Saturdays and weekends and holidays, but they're out and about with our other public safety folks, so thank you.
So just before we dive into this, do we want to wait till later to talk about the silver bullets, or are we doing it now?
Well, I mean, in fairness, when we
Get to capital
when
part
we get to
two?
waste collection
Okay, we'll talk about
in the
it then.
public works budget, I think that's where
Okay.
actually where it is and where I would recommend talking about it.
Oh, okay.
So as far as the general operating budget of Public Works, and not a substantial change, I think Terry and crew suffer from the same issues that a lot of departments suffer from, where things cost more, vehicle maintenance, and when you have a repair on a vehicle, especially a large vehicle, it might be a $15,000 repair instead of just something simple. If you replace a turbo or a computer or the wiring harness I was told about a little while ago, you can't just replace, part of the wiring harness. And the vehicles, Public Works maintains all of our fleet, and also maintains the school department, and the fire department's mechanic is at Public Works doing the fire department as well as Wyndham. So the facility is kind of stretched as far as what it can take care of, but I know they do a lot with limited resources. But Terry can speak to any of the specific items in his budget.
Questions?
I have a question, just public areas and White Rock School. I just had a question about that because the school's not town-owned.
I think the agreement with when that school changed hands, and Efren can correct me if I'm wrong, is the town retained the property around it, and we maintain that? Like there's a pickleball court or tennis court out there or something that the rec department still maintains. We do still mow the grounds.
Okay.
The backside, the recreation part of it, yes.
And are there any usable, between you or Cindy, but are there usable ball fields still there?
Yes.
Ball field there, and like I said, a pickleball court or tennis court, whatever it is.
We don't actually own the property, but the owner has been great to work with with the town, and we provide some maintenance services for those facilities.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
So this came up before, but now we're in the actual Public Works section. So I've noticed our town engineer is involved in so much, and there's so many projects going on. I'm curious, at what point do we look at 1.5 or 2 town engineers, maybe compared to other municipalities?
I like to tell our town engineer that I think he does the job of 2 right now already. He's just phenomenal job. Where is he? He's hiding. I think part of the reason that we carved it out last year as its own department, but we didn't put it in the budget that way. We want to start showing what facilities and engineering is separately, and then we can evaluate that independently of Public Works. Part of the reason it was in Public Works is when we hired the position, one, we didn't have enough space. We didn't know to what extent who town engineering would be working with, and I think now it's a good setup to be independent of Public Works.
And I think too, when you look at that position, I think you want to be careful that you don't, either one or two, I mean, some of the projects that we have, the town has going on is way beyond what we want our town engineer to do. And just my opinion, what Chuck works on right now is basically stuff that's town-focused. I think anytime you get an outside type of a project, it's too big, too much for a town engineer to do. He's not saying he's not capable of doing that, but I think we have to be careful of how we manage our resources.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Questions?
I did actually have a couple of residents had asked me over the course of the winter, just about what the schedule for getting roads as well as the sidewalks cleared. I did a couple residents in particular asked about getting sidewalks cleared on snow days, and I'm just curious if we were able to provide a bigger budget for you to a cost-effective extent. I mean, is it a lack of available people that we just don't have? Is there enough equipment to get the sidewalks and roads around the village in an even more timely fashion than I think you already do? But would there be a cost-effective, additional
I don't believe there's a cost-effective method, no.
Yeah.
Sidewalk maintenance is expensive. The machines that we use to clear our sidewalks run in the close to $200,000 a piece of equipment range.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I think what the expectations is would be for you guys to dictate to us.
Yeah.
You dictate the expectations and we tell you what it's gonna take to meet those expectations. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
We've changed our sidewalk program a lot, so sidewalks clearing begins during a snowstorm, something we've never done until this year. So the sidewalk machine goes out, depending on where the storm is, but by like 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, we're starting to clear sidewalks. So at the very least, we've got the sidewalks around the school where the general pedestrian traffic is at least gone over once before school time. So again, we're trying to anticipate what everybody wants, but again, that's a
Tough job.
perception that somebody just has to direct us in what you want to be done, and then we'll tell how we're gonna get that point.
I also think it's managing expectations.
Yes.
We have over 10 miles of sidewalks that we plow.
Right.
The machine does not move at the speed of a plow truck.
Yeah.
And machines, plural. So it takes a little while for it to happen.
Yeah.
And I guess I would challenge anybody to look at even like Portland and the Old Port.
Right.
To see how quickly with a lot of resources and an emphasis on it, how quickly it actually happens. I mean, the expectation is after a snow event that we complete it in a timely manner. I know they start during it, but obviously the greater resources are placed on the roads.
Of course.
And then the sidewalks.
Yeah.
And the sidewalks at school are in session too. I know Public Works will put an emphasis on that.
We have tried very hard to be ahead of the curve on the sidewalks, knowing
Yeah.
that sometimes, and it depends on the storm too,
Right.
Snow conditions, how well the machines will handle the snow. We got some machines, newer machines that handle some of the heavier snow better. But again, we own 3 sidewalk machines, 2 frontline pieces, and a spare, and they're not cheap. They're not cheap to maintain, and we had one breakdown this winter because in the middle of the winter, it was a $14,000 job, and the machine was gone for 5 days.
Oh, wow.
So these are trials and tribulations, so we put our best foot forward. It takes like one breakdown to throw the whole program, into chaos.
Gotcha. Thank you.
24 miles of sidewalk, and we plow almost 11 miles. How do we differentiate between which sidewalk we plow and which we don't?
I don't think you've actually had to sit through one yet, but
Have
the
not.
town council picks that.
Okay.
So it's really, like this year, and not necessarily this calendar year, but we have money allocated for a sidewalk to connect the high school to Narragansett Access Road. We will come to the council. You will have to say, go forth and actually maintain it. It'll be council order, but we'll recommend that. We'll say it's a connector sidewalk, makes perfect sense. Where the struggle's always been over the years is sidewalks outside of the major corridors. There's always pressure from the neighborhoods and it's a council decision.
And the other part of that, David, is the sidewalks, some of these sidewalks that aren't being maintained right now are a very old standard. They're a 3-foot sidewalk, and we have, our machines are 5 feet wide. So to go in and maintain, especially winter maintenance, we have sidewalk requests all the time as far as fixing, things that are trip hazards and stuff like that, which we can do, but if this council decides sometime that we're gonna go do some of these older sidewalks, we've got some work ahead of us to make them maintainable.
And as we dictate future subdivisions, future commercial spaces, some of those, and are asking them to put in sidewalks as a part of those projects, are we putting the burden of maintaining the sidewalks? And maybe this is for that meeting, but just curious from a budgeting perspective, like, are we putting the burden of maintaining the sidewalk on the business or the subdivision, generally speaking?
If it's not accepted as a public way.
Yep.
So if it's still a private way, it's 100% on whoever's maintaining it. Even if the council accepts the road, you need to tell us whether to maintain the sidewalks or not. I would say, and Terry can correct me if I'm wrong, or any of the staff, that more modern, recent developments are typically designed to a better standard when they are required to have sidewalks versus your older subdivisions. We also, the council fairly recently adjusted the overlay district for where we're putting an emphasis on sidewalks being required, generally speaking, to expand and enhance the existing network rather than randomly at the far end of it or something like that. So hopefully that
It does.
answers the question.
Thank you.
And again, not necessarily a question, but I really appreciate the information in here. Like, when I saw dead ends / turning circles at 170, I was like, whoa. And then like average time to complete a plow route, that I just think that information is really handy to have. So thank you. Thank you.
I'd piggyback on that quickly. As the member of the GPCOG committee, at our last meeting, we were asked to come with something that like the different municipalities felt they were doing really well, and a couple of the different town managers were talking about their budget process and the booklet they put together, and they were discussing putting together some of these pages that really discuss what the departments do, how many people are in them, this page that Councilor Cush is mentioning in terms of this, and as soon as they're talking about it, I went back to our budget and I was looking through and I'm like, oh, we do that, so I think this is really helpful, and as a new counselor, like, I learned a lot reading this document. It was a really informative read, so thank you for all your work on that.
The one thing I'd add, and stop me at any point because I could talk all day, as Susie knows, staring at me. This is a living document, so if there's other information that you want to see in here, like I talked to the chair this week about how we list our bonds and breaking it down better, so when we get to the bond section, because the town's refinanced them over the years and what they originally were, which I forgot to talk to Sharon so she could start digging that up before we get to the bond section. But it just, any of that information that you feel is helpful for yourselves or the public that we may be forgetting, just mention it. We can plop it in here.
Thank you very much. I'm going to bring this up now, but it's one of these, maybe now, maybe capital part 2, maybe both. What I would really like to see, because every year I've been on the council, I've seen an ask for a salt shed, and what I would like to see is an estimate of how much we believe that would actually save us year over year. Would we be able to just pay for the bond with the cost savings of not having to lose salt? And so I just like to see those numbers.
We're happy to try quantifying that. I think would be hard, but we're happy to try. I don't know if it would pay for itself. I think we'd have to try to quantify it. That being said, the application period is closed, right? So I can say this? We're trying to pursue grant funding to address that. Whether or not we get it, a whole other story. But I think it's become very, very clear. We're still moving forward with master planning at the Public Works site for the future. Not to say that anything's right on the horizon, but just what does the future of this property look like? As the council's aware, but we're trying to chase some money to solve this problem. But we'll see if we can.
Can I speak a little bit to this question?
No, you're done for the day. Yes, you can.
And I think it was gonna be hard to put an actual number figure to that, but from the public works standpoint, there's several things that we consider problematic with having our sand stored outside. Losing the salt effective out of the sand is one thing, environmental impact's another thing. What my guys or our guys go through in a storm that, chunks on top of the trucks, chunks in the sanders that hold the sanders up. I mean, if you wanna dig a sander out some night when they're getting chunks out, you come on up and you can grab a shovel and shovel sand out of the back of the truck. It can break equipment. I mean, there's a lot of things that go through that you quantify it. We have to screen our sand during the wintertime. The pile gets put up in October, November, and it starts raining immediately when it goes up. We've talked about covering it. We've covered it twice, and that has been not effective. So money, cost-wise, I think it's gonna be hard to put a figure on that, but I can tell you that having that sand outside is not convenient for the folks that use that sand on a regular basis. It gets wet. We had trouble this winter with wet sand. The sand gets in the truck, and it's just wet sand in the truck, and it comes out as mud, if it comes out at all, and it's just.
We're one of the few municipalities that actually doesn't have a large shed. I mean, really, even the rural towns have it, but it's to the point now, it's because the town never did it in the past, it's just very expensive.
Yeah. But then, I mean, hearing this, we're talking extra man hours, we're talking, if they have to get on top of the machine and hack with a shovel, I mean, one workers' comp claim.
We've actually had to build this past year, we built a platform, so the trucks will drive up next to it, so they don't have to get on the trucks, because, it's a concern for our guys in the middle of the night climbing up on top of a truck and throwing chunks off, and if you don't get the chunks off, you don't get the sand in the truck. I mean, it's, and again, when it's snowing, it's 20 degrees out, the last thing you wanna do is have a guy stand on top of a truck in the middle of the night, risk falling off or whatever. Unfortunately, we haven't had to deal with that, and I just do not, quite honestly.
In terms of the amount of salt we'd have to buy, it sounds like we'd have to buy less because it's less open to the elements, but then also just the amount of hours to complete each plow would also diminish, and so.
We'll take a stab at it.
Okay.
I'm happy to try to put numbers to it.
Is there any way to somehow make a case for some amount of TIF funding to help support the sand shed?
No. I would have done it already.
Yeah.
I've asked this question, no.
Yeah.
With TIF funding in general, I really try to have it pass the straight face test. There are municipalities out there, because really there's no state agency cracking down on this, that don't follow the rules. I try to follow the rules but stretch it where we can.
Right. Guidelines.
Guidelines, But with a straight face, no. There's been some effort at the state level to try to amend the TIF laws to be more flexible with construction.
Yeah.
But I'm optimistic that the route that I will fill the council in on and be more public when the deadline is closed, we're trying to get some serious funding for up there.
I have a question, just because we've broken it out now, about the lower public workshop, just for the public. I mean, if we're gonna be doing the master plan and stuff like that, can you just speak to what you use the lower shop for?
The old shop is used realistic on a regular basis. We store, the sweeper's stored in there, the chipper's in there. We did use it for trash bag storage, and we're anticipating that to be used for some kind of facility for the trash totes going forward. We've been doing some remodeling in there to make it a little bit more user-friendly. The town's tire storage is in the back of that. Again, we store some things inside that are expensive, and we just don't want them sitting outside, but it is used on a regular basis by the crew at Public Works for certain woodworking or any type of that stuff. And attached to that building is also our liquid calcium, it's not calcium, but salt brine system is attached to that building. To not have that building for what we do right now would be, I don't know what we'd do without that building. And I'm so glad we kept it. And like I said, we've done some renovation there. The building has some issues. We'd had to ask for money in capital part 2 that I don't believe is funded, but we're gonna do the best we can with what we're given to make that building sustainable for a long time.
And for the newer counselors, during COVID, that was kind of a you'd always use the building, but the crews were split back when there was worry that when we had isolation, if Public Works got a COVID case, it put everybody out, so we actually split the crews. Some were working out of that shop versus the other shop, so it definitely, it's a building that has value.
Yep.
Any other questions? Go ahead.
Thank you. So while we're there, just, with such a $1 million budget, I'll just bring up, I feel like it's the little orphan building, like it only gets $265 for building maintenance? That's my question.
Yes. So fundamental difference on how we operate our budget versus the other side is I give the department heads do not exceed numbers. So that's why there's a $265 increase to get to that 3%. That being said, I try to encourage flexibility within these budgets as much as possible. So if that building didn't need maintenance in 1 year, okay, we'll put it somewhere else where it's needed at Public Works, as long as it's within Public Works. Now, granted, it is the old shop. It is a lower priority compared to the upper shop that's the new one. But yeah, that's how they got to that 3%, the $265. And I will give most of the department heads credit. They all bring in responsible budgets, but most of them stick to that guideline. Some of them are a little out there, and I rein them in. They know who they are.
Thank you.
They're starting to squirm when I said that, but yeah.
As I said, we'll take the money that's given to us and put it to the best use. And these are budgetary things, and I know that $265 for the old shop maintenance is an unrealistic figure, but we're not gonna let the building fall down around our ears. We'll make sure the building survives and do the best we can.
Thank you for your dedication.
Any other questions? Let me move on to my favorite part right here. Let's just go on to solid waste and recycling and just get it over with.
So the big ticket item is we are going into a new contract with Casella this year. That's why you're seeing the increase in curbside collection costs. That's primarily the big ticket item in an attempt to try to offset that and try to rip the Band-Aid off of an issue that I think has been an issue, thorn in the town side since I've been here. And most municipalities have dropped this, is removing the silver bullets from Public Works. I had some good feedback and good questions ahead of this item. And I talked to Terry and crew. We will offer curbside recycling collection for businesses if they use that. If you're running a large-scale commercial business that has like dumpsters worth of recycling, no, we're not going to do that. But if you have a business in the village and you just want to put out recycling, yeah, that's cool. We have no issue with that whatsoever, right, Terry?
Correct.
Yes. As long as it's just not massive. I'll let Terry answer the majority of the questions, but I mean, obviously we had a lot of problems during COVID. I think there's problems all the time. It is a resource drain on Public Works, so it's a morale drain. Most people follow the rules, but when you get some people that don't, and we tried to figure this out one time, but we just didn't have any luck. We're not even sure it's all Gorham people using this.
Right.
And there's no way to police it. So it's who's using it, and we know how they're using it is not necessarily appropriate all the time. There's trash, there's couches, there's a bookcase last week, was it?
Yeah, yep, came in the middle of the day. Yep.
You know, it's just, some people even try to open the ends of the containers and throw bigger items in, right? It's just.
They absolutely do that.
So there are some municipalities that still offer this service, but most with curbside collection, our size do not. So happy to start the discussion.
Well, I just add, I've been a guinea pig with the larger totes. And when you've got the larger tote, for the recycling, with the little small open ones, I can understand maybe some people wanted to use the silver bullet to some sort of, they had a bunch of boxes for the kid's birthday or whatever. But, I think if we're offering those larger totes for the recycling, it seems like a reasonable trade-off for anybody that would be legitimately using the silver bullets. So, having the silver bullets out there just invites the kind of bad behavior that you all are talking about. So, I mean, I think it's a reasonable suggestion. It's saving money. Can we, would we just sell them? Is there a
We don't
willing
own-
buyer?
We don't own them, they
We don't
would
own
go
them.
back to
Oh, okay.
IWS or whoever the hauler owns it.
Yeah, yeah.
And the cost that Ephraim's talking about, the $50,000, that's just for trucking.
Right, right.
It doesn't cover the cost of disposal, you know, recyclables are disposed at. We pay $65 a ton to dispose of recyclables, and that pays for the process and whatnot. And we are getting some, you know, IWS, EcoMaine is getting some return on that, which they reinvest into the operation over there at a cost savings of municipalities. The one thing I'll caution you guys on that, the contamination of these containers, I believe if it gets over 30%, when they dump it on the floor, if it's 30, if they look at it and say, geez, and crow, we can't process that. That gets loaded back up into a truck, goes back over the scales, goes into EcoMaine at $97.50 a ton.
Yeah.
Now it's municipal solid waste. So,
Yeah.
you know, we live it on a daily basis. People come and it's the few that spoil it, and they're very brazen about it, whether we're working or not. They come in the middle of the day and like the bookshelf showed up at some point and people just, and I don't know if it's Gorham people, who it is, but they want to dump something, they're dumping it.
Yeah, I think it's a sensible suggestion. I think it makes a lot of sense.
So it's not going to surprise anybody that I've tried to get rid of the silver bullets for years because everybody doesn't use them properly. But I think that because we have curbside recycling, there's an opportunity to do that. And I have used the silver bullets when I forgot to put out my recycling, but I would just save it until the next week. And I think to Councillor Sims' point, if the container is going to be that big, I think that's a good offer for people to do. I also think that, to your point, Terry, about when you get couches and air conditioners and all that kind of stuff, you take Public Works employees that take that and dispose of it.
Correct, and we pay it, EcoMaine, or wherever we have to go with it for disposal costs, so, and that's a cost that the taxpayers just incur.
So I think the other thing I think that we've talked about in the past, and this kind of doesn't have to do with the silver bullets, but I know on Harding Bridge Road, before there was a development at the end, that used to be where everybody dumped their couches and their things because it was a dead-end road, and there weren't a lot of houses. So I think we've talked about this several times, that if there was a way to do those big bulky items or something like that at some point, I think that might be something that we might see, because now they don't have the silver bullet location, if we get rid of this, to drop those big items. I think that might be something we look at in the future, just have one day, maybe we talk to, I think we said we would maybe talk to like the trash, company or something like that, but if we could do something like that in the future, I think for bulky items, I think that would be helpful. Maybe not through Public Works, but maybe through something else, so.
One thing we don't, that I would not, so I have no problem with bulky pickup as long as it's done properly, but there's been municipalities around in the past that have done a curbside bulky waste pickup. That is very ineffective. It ties the Public Works guys and girls up for a long period of time. And, right now, people could, if they're picking this stuff up and putting it in the vehicle instead of bringing it to the Public Works garage, if they can just take it to a facility. We have facilities in Westbrook and Portland that are, reasonable cost. I mean, we're gonna have to pick up the cost of the bulky waste. And that's gonna be a substantial piece of money, because bulky waste is not cheap to get rid of. You're gonna have to pay for the trucking, you're gonna have to pay for disposal, and you're gonna have to pay, if we do it, as a Public Works project, you're gonna have to pay for Public Works people to be there to manage it. So, there's things to think about if you wanna go that direction. Again, whatever you guys wanna do, but again, when I look at what I have in my budget, and we're talking about adding a bulky waste program,
Yeah, no, I would say it would be a separate thing.
that money in a better direction, I think, at this point, so.
And one thing we've never had an emphasis on, I think we're doing a little of it, we could do better at it, is advertising those areas that you can take things to, and trying to just hammer it into the public that if you need to get rid of an air conditioner, here's the place to go. Here's when they're open, here's a link, here's what they'll take, here's what the costs are. My gut tells me that most people just don't know.
I would add, I was going to bring that up as well. Haven't been on the website recently, but it would be advantageous, because that's a common question, especially for new residents. Where do I bring my stuff. Excuse me, those two facilities, and then there's also a business that will come to your house, a local business that will come to your house and grab your trash if you need it.
You know, we will be doing it, talking solid waste and bulky pickup. You know, Kelly's put a ton of work into the mechanical arm pickup that we're gonna go to in trash. With the introduction to the totes, there's gonna be a lot of public outreach. Kelly's going to an event next weekend, I believe, with totes and information, and we're gonna, now that we're really moving down the road, we're gonna really start putting some information out to the public, and we're gonna do some show and tell with the cards and try to get people more educated. But again, it's like anything, if you want to be educated on it, there's information there, but if you don't really want to be, you're not going to pick it up, so.
Well, and I think this is a perfect opportunity, not that we can tell the schools what to do, but through the public library, we've had EcoMaine come. EcoMaine does an amazing job of educating. I suspect, since I haven't been since COVID, but that EcoMaine maybe has a video of their facility and what happens there. And I just think, you know, I grew up with a dump, and I knew what the dump looked like. How many people, kids especially, know where their trash goes? I mean, they don't know where their milk comes from. They don't know where their trash goes either. So, you know, it used to be that we took second graders from White Rock School. Now I think you have to be junior high. I don't know who's our EcoMaine person, but you have to be older to tour the facility. But, you know, once you've heard that people are sending snakes and loaded guns and, you know, you hear the stories, the anecdotes, it makes a difference. So, you know, for instance, if the library had something each year that explained what you do, and because the mechanical arm totes, you're not going to fit a sofa in there, but people are still going to cheat and put what fits in there. So, you know, if we give them an idea of this is what happens, I just think that, I mean, I love the idea of educating around those totes anyway, or the mechanical arm, but.
Piece by piece, if you chop it up over many weeks, maybe you'll, but they have some, to your point, they have some phenomenal public outreach opportunities. I know they do a ton with the schools, but I think we're moving in a direction where we have to do the public reach out anyway, and probably really emphasize at all our departments, you know, what they can offer.
And I'd just add to that, I think, is that being a test user of the totes, they're great. I mean, I think once people get used to them, they'll be very happy with them. And that, you know, the thought occurs, like I said, the totes are bigger for the recycling. They're also, I mean, you know, before we just had like a little, you know, metal trash can that we were using for the trash bags. So now you're going to be able to fit more trash in one of these trash totes. So I would love to see, and I don't think it needs to come out of the Public Works Department budget, you know, maybe a combination of like Parks and Rec and maybe even through Adult Ed. I would love to see us do a little bit more outreach and education around composting. So, I mean, a huge amount of the waste is food waste, and if people compost, it reduces our overall tipping fees. So there's a good cause for the whole town, and you benefit as well. We've got a lot of folks with lots big enough to do composting in the backyard. So.
EcoMaine does provide outreach to all this stuff, and they do have a composting program at EcoMaine. They have food waste that gets brought in, and it's shipped to a facility that's processing it. So, but again, anytime you go into the food recycling is, again, it's costly.
Yeah.
There's a cost that goes along with that. So anytime you're a facility, I mean, I sit on the board of directors for ECO, and there's a lot of moving parts there. And the food waste processing, they would love to get bigger in it, but it's just a matter of how much can the municipality stand to pay. So they try to be very mindful of how the cost is shifted to the owners of the facility. So there is programs, and EcoMaine, again, is a really, really good bunch of people on outreach that, and I'm sure if you go on YouTube, I know there was a video last year of them refinishing the tipping room floor, which was even amazing to watch at what they did in a very small period of time. So
We still sell recycling or compost
we still have compost bins.
thingamajigs. I forget the compost bins at Public Works. Yeah.
All right. Other questions?
So let's just, so is that company different from the little green buckets that,
Yes, yeah, so we've done that for years and years, so like a compost container is just a public outreach thing at Public Works, but, garbage in the gardens.
Yeah.
We've just been paying it out of one of the accounts, I'll be honest, I'll have to look it up, recycling. But we pay for the garbage to garden totes down behind public safety in the parking lot by Narragansett. Those have been, since we did the pilot program, we've just been paying for it. But they offer a curbside service in Gorham as well.
thank you.
Can we move on to cemeteries?
So we've got a committee coming, and I am excited for the conversation with the committee and working towards solutions, but as you can imagine, cemeteries, if you had a priority list in town, pretty low on the priority list, but we should always strive to maintain cemeteries, and then obviously there is a cost to operate the cemeteries that are active for Public Works.
To that note, I do want to speak on behalf of Councilor Willis, Councilor Krusch, and myself. Thank you to everyone who applied to the cemetery, the new cemetery committee. We met some fantastic applicants, and we are super excited for them to work with Public Works. They were all, every person we talked to was very, very. It was their hobby, maintaining history and preserving these cemeteries. They really care deeply about it, so really excited for that work.
And
Sorry
they'll
to
be approved at our next meeting.
Yes. In speaking about more stats we'd like to see on the pages, emptiness of, for just maybe if it were even percentage for each cemetery, so we know how many lots we generally have left. I know there's been this kind of in the back of our brains, do we need more room for cemeteries? So just knowing where we're at would be good.
Here's the little fine line here. That would be something that Lori would have to provide.
Yeah.
Because Public Works does the maintenance on the cemeteries, and we help the clerk's office with logistics and stuff, but as far as knowing how many lots are left and that stuff, that's a town clerk. I don't want to pass the buck, but they have that information. That's just plain and simple.
Yep.
I think we have enough data with, it's Hillside on Houston Road, right?
Yeah.
With Hillside, our active cemetery now, not necessarily on burials, but sale of lots, to see how that has progressed, that new section. And we could probably figure out from that data how long we have left based on the available square footage up there. But yeah, it's in the back of our minds to, if a property presents itself that is suitable for a cemetery, we're gonna have to move on it at some point.
Right now, on the Hillside Cemetery is where we have the most room. It's the only place we have really any room for expansion. The Eastern Cemetery, there's no room for expansion. That is pretty much all spoken for. Those are our two big cemeteries. We got, the West Gorham Cemetery's got some room for expansion. Again, it'd be acquiring land, but the other ones that we have are really, there's no opportunity for expansion because of what's going on around those.
Yep.
Yeah, I was just trying to think off the top of my head, the ones that have space near them, but sometimes when you see empty spaces, it's already purchased, and then you don't know, it looks like it's empty, but it's, so yeah, I'd say Hillside's the only one that probably has viable.
And it's not even where it is, it's what the soil material is, how level it is. I mean, what makes up a good cemetery, so that's something we're gonna have to be watching.
Yeah, I think I asked Counselor Willis before he was a counselor, just as a real estate agent, I said, if you ever see any land that would make a good cemetery, please let the town know. So I think that, I asked that question like 2 years ago, so. But yeah, I look forward to what the committee comes up with, and I guess in terms of funding and things like that, I know that there's, cemetery stone maintenance really isn't in there anymore, but I think that'll just be an ask of the town, and we'll kind of figure that out, either capital part 2, maybe we start budgeting for a little bit of that or something.
We also have some reserves for some of the cemeteries, as they're not crazy amounts, but I mean, there's some money tucked away for specific cemeteries, donations, stuff like that.
Yeah. Okay. Moving on to stormwater compliance.
Stormwater, as you know, is, we're obligated to maintain this and perform this program. We're part of the MS4 program, which is primarily the greater village area. I mean, there's this detailed map of it. Even with changes in administrations at the federal level, this is still going to become more and more restrictive and time consuming. There are a lot of, this last permit got held up for years because of.
Permit that lasted, I think, 11 years before they decided on a new permit. And as I sit here right now, I'm not sure if we actually have a new permit yet, because there's some, Tom's involved in this a little bit, but any time you get into environmental stuff, there's so many stakeholders, and it's hard to come to an agreement, and so it's.
Stakeholders and their
quagmire, let's put it
special
this way.
interests that sue on behalf of their interests, trying to put more aggressive requirements in. Not necessarily because of Gorham, but because of the, issues in the greater area of the permit, Casco Bay, stuff like that. So this is TIF funded. We didn't have a note, but I think we'll add a note in there. We must have missed it. But it's funded through, I believe, the Sebago Brewing TIF. Not all of it. Sharon's whispering in my ear.
And I know we had some turnover in this position. Is this position filled? And
We have a new stormwater compliance manager. Megan Fontaine came on with us, I think, in October.
She's phenomenal.
Very good hire. She came with some good credentials, and she's turned out to be a very good employee, yeah. And the stormwater stuff is confusing as it can be. We really strive to maintain good stormwater, best management practices with our developments that go on. We lean on the developers. I'm not gonna lie to you, there's some that you've probably heard from that we have put a foot down on them, because what happens historically, if a developer violates the stormwater rules, they don't get fined. The town gets fined for allowing the developer to work outside of their permit and outside the rules. So I'm gonna do my best to not let the town get fined over something that somebody else does. So again, we've had a couple of big developers that weren't very happy with us for a little while, but we certainly got their attention. I think once you do that, developers talk among themselves and problems kind of go away a little bit, because they know you're serious about taking care of the problems. And we stress that when we do project meetings and pre-construction meetings, that we will shut you down. We're not gonna put up with non-compliance, so.
And it's not a hypothetical. Years ago, I think shortly before I came on board, the town was fined because we did not aggressively go after a developer as much as we should have. We did leniency, and we should have been more aggressive, and the town learned its lesson.
And when that happens, does it cost the town more than once, or is it like usually there's like one?
You get put on notice, and they watch you for a while. I think we're kind of out of that period of time, but there was a microscope on Gorham for a while because the town did not aggressively go after that developer.
Am I correct in remembering that we did some stormwater work out here in the municipal parking lot in an effort to sort of lead by example, that when we ask the developers to do some of these things, that the town themselves are also taking that on?
Yes.
Is that fair?
Yeah, and there was a multi-department effort as well as, volunteers in the community to do that. But yeah, all of our projects would be subject to stormwater anyway. But yes, this one specifically was to try to capture stormwater from this project, which predates a lot of the stormwater control measures.
There's a lot of new technology and a lot of new methods that have come along in the stormwater world, and we try very hard, staff, to incorporate that, and have the developers incorporate some of these other methods of stormwater treatment into their projects. And a lot of times the developers are finding it's kind of, it may be more expensive for them to do what we ask them to do, but it takes up less of their site. It's more effective on their site management. Like, if you don't have to have a stormwater pond on your site, and you can have a below ground infiltration system, they like that. So we bring that to the table, and hopefully the developers will bite on that. Most of them, again, the engineers and stuff in the area that work are very familiar with MS4, and they're trying to do projects and incorporate stormwater management, best management practices that are more effective and less intrusive to the project, so.
Just a question, the stormwater retention ponds, you mentioned that, so the alternatives to those, are those something that's like it's an option, or is it something that we're now kind of requiring, or?
It's an option.
Yeah.
It's up to them what they want to do, but I mean,
Yeah.
do you want a 2-acre retention pond? Do you want a system, a subsurface system that you can do
Right.
something on top of on your
Yeah.
project? I mean, that's
Right.
the project, and you gotta, well, it's cheaper for them to dig a pond, but in the long run, is that what you want on your project?
Yeah, right. I mean, are there ways we could maybe even more incentivize the developers to go that route, or?
Possibly, it'd have to be through, ordinances and
Yeah.
policies, but,
Yeah.
we push that envelope to try to get guys developers to look at some different alternatives, so.
Nice.
Any other questions?
Do we maintain any stormwater ponds in any of the developments still? Because I think once upon a time, we do not. Everything,
All stormwater ponds and infrastructure outside of the right-of-way, unless specifically taken over by the town, is the responsibility of the homeowners association in the development. A lot of people don't realize that. We're dealing with a development right now, that the folks that live in said development don't realize that they're supposed to have a homeowners association. They have several ponds that are, I won't say they're in need of maintenance, but they are looking down the road to get ready to when they do need maintenance, and they're jumping through some hurdles with their neighbors on how to go about that, but.
and so the compliance of that falls on us, but it's the subdivision's responsibility for maintaining it.
And I want to emphasize compliance.
Only in the MS4.
Yeah, only in the MS4, and yes, the ultimate responsibility is the property owners, and that's the hard part. And we do have stormwater, controls on municipal properties that we maintain, but they're exclusive to the municipal properties.
How often does the MS4 map get updated? Is it based on census, or?
I believe it's census-based, yes.
Yeah, the permit, I think.
Just got updated.
Yeah, so it didn't change for us this last round, but it could expand in the future. Impaired water bodies is a big deal in reclassification, but I think right now we're more or less, it's how we inspect things was the big hurdles for us.
Yeah, it's not what you think it is. When you think of the village, it's very census tract based, so some areas are in that you wouldn't think are in, and some areas are out that you would think is in, so.
So stormwater falls under my budget, but it's a combination of, Tom is involved in it, Chuck's involved in it, Kevin's involved in it. I mean, it encompasses so much when you talk about stormwater, and it's much bigger than just what this budget really shows.
Go ahead.
So when we're talking about the town not being responsible, what about that, I don't know the pond there by Public Works, between Narragansett and,
So they'd be, if it's on a municipal property, yes, that would be ours. So
That's
like
our
out,
pond, yes.
the high school has one, the middle school has one. I am guessing Great Falls has something, I'm not
Great
familiar.
Falls has one. I think all the schools have one, and
okay.
and we try it. It's one of those things that, again, it's low-hanging fruit. We try to get in there and keep them cleaned up, and it's just, it's time-consuming, and we try our best.
Thank you.
All right. We'll move on to engineering and facilities. Thank you, Terry.
Thanks, Terry. So this is where we tuck the town engineer and Kevin Wood, our facilities coordinator.
Yeah, Kevin's got to come up.
Good, how are you? So I think as I alluded to last time, we're just trying to we've been trying to adjust the cost centers in the municipal budget to create cost centers. And Public Works probably wasn't the home for this. it was when we started, but now that we branched out a little bit, we're gonna make it a cost center. So any questions?
This is a random question, but are there vehicles assigned to the two of them, or no?
Chuck has a bicycle.
Okay.
No, he doesn't. Kevin has Terry's old Public Works pickup.
Okay.
For a while, we had a very, very, very old something. That wasn't fit for the road, but
Yeah.
code officer truck or something. But Kevin has that pickup, obviously doing facilities, and then Chuck is welcome to use any of the fleet vehicles in the
Okay.
motor pool. Yeah.
I'm just curious.
Ephraim, can you speak to the cost savings of having an engineer on staff versus what was done in the past?
I think there's a variety of cost savings. Having a licensed engineer allows us to do many things. I think the low-hanging fruit for cost savings is when we go to apply for grants or do preliminary engineering on those grants or PAX applications, things like that. We may still use outside engineering, and Chuck's nodding his head, but our ability to do a lot of this stuff in-house dramatically increases our reach on what we can bring in for funding. And PAX would be a perfect example. But then you take larger projects that can be reviewed. Some of the reviews can be done in-house now. We still have some third-party reviews. We do, Chuck does a lot, manages the RFPs now for roads and projects like that. When you look at like Kevin and Chuck work on like the ball field lighting in Little Falls. Before, it would have been a mixed match of departments trying to figure out how to do that. They just take care of it. They manage the whole project. Sidewalk projects, and site inspections, yeah, things like that. So yeah, there's a tremendous cost savings, and I think the flexibility component is something that should be highlighted. It allows us to be a lot more mobile and flexible when tackling these projects. Anything you want to add?
Centralizing a point of contact for the town has been really nice for developers. I know I run the pre-construction meetings, and being present on the planning board, so I'm at every planning board meeting, so when those specific questions come up, it's nice to have town representation on the other side of a engineer who's doing project presentation. So centralizing for staff members too, some of these projects, and you know, making them kind of consistent every time we go out and do them.
Another benefit, and I think it's more experience from both of their parts, but having the ability to have facilities and our town engineer coordinate and talk about our facilities, our projects, stuff like that has been tremendously useful from past experience, as well as, you know, Chuck used to work at the Jetport, doing facilities over there, tackling everything from office remodels to working with IT to road projects. It's beneficial to have one access point to all those conversations.
Kevin's decades of experience in facilities also helps.
I think he was complimenting,
I
and
think
I think it was a
I
compliment.
didn't want to say the number I wanted.
Go ahead.
I would just echo, I mean, Chuck just said the word that was kind of ringing in my head, but consistency. I think that's huge, that as the private sector works with the town, having a consistent voice, having a consistent interpretation of some of the things that we're doing goes a long way for developers, for anybody who's coming in here to a project. So I think that's a huge plus for having that in-house engineer.
Questions, comments? Go ahead.
I guess I have a question, having served previously on the town council when we did a joint facility study with the school department. I was just curious how outdated or relevant that possibly still is.
It's more a Kevin question. I mean, I think it's something we're using, and then we're using to focus our needs. Would that be a fair?
Yeah, I think that study that was done was more of a broad overview, and I tend to do a lot more detailed exams of your buildings and to know quite where you're at. We've only been a year into this, but I think we've substantially changed how you're maintaining your buildings now, used to be just kind of, they weren't really maintained. Each department addressed the needs at the moment that were broke down, but we've really flipped that. We've got defined PM programs now that state what we're really looking for. They're diving more in-depth on the equipment, telling us what kind of shape it's really in, and actually fixing things. And there's a lot more oversight on our vendors now, which has dramatically improved service and reduced costs. So we know what we're asking for. It's a fixed price now. And we've looked at elevator service, monitoring systems for fire and security. We've consolidated all those. We've brought those costs way down. We've eliminated a lot of phone lines and gone to wireless on our security systems and fire alarm systems. That's been a huge cost savings. Just doing a lot of the right stuff, but to answer your question on the bigger picture, I do think a lot of your buildings are the 20-25 year range since they were last updated. On the bell curve, you're getting into the areas where you're going to need to start spending a lot more money on maintaining equipment versus replacing it. So I think you've got some challenging years coming up in the next 10 years. Equipment, the buildings themselves, you've got good buildings, good stone, brick structures for the most part. You've got a few outlying ones that I think over time you're going to have to decide. Talked about fire stations, Old Roby, maybe have to decide how much money you want to spend on that building versus a new facility for rec. So just questions like that over time, but I think you're in relatively good shape, and we're making progress every day.
Thank you. Kevin, I have a question for you. So if you were to say facilities-wise, some priorities that you had that you think we should be looking at just off the top of your head, I mean, if you feel comfortable just, giving us.
Got a whole list.
Oh, I know, he's got a whole list, but just like the top three, I guess, that we should be kind of aiming for.
Obviously, the windows at the library are a big one this year. That building, the newer section's 20 years old. Those are wood windows wrapped with metal, and they're rotted, deteriorated. So our replacement on the composite window that'll last 50 years, lifetime installation. So we need to progress with that. This building, most used building that you have, rooftop HVAC units at some point are going to need to be replaced. There's these systems on the side over here that blow air in. There's a valve box in every room in this building. There's 100 in this building. There's controllers on those. That's old technology that's going to need to be upgraded. I mentioned Ephraim, we need to budget for that to replace 10 a year. Over a period of 10 years, we can take some of the used ones. They're not supported anymore. So things like that. So this building, library, Public Works is another building, 25 years old. We're going to need to replace some HVAC equipment up there. Luckily, your buildings themselves, the brick and mortar ones, are in good shape. There's always doors and windows that you're going to have to tackle. Your roofs are in really good shape, so those are big line items. So you're not too bad on some of your stuff. So big ticket items, again, are more HVAC, flooring in this building will be another big one. But overall, not too bad.
Thank you.
So the version I get is usually like a lot longer, so just if you're aware.
I don't want to get into detail.
Yeah.
That was a very simplified approach that you did a great job on.
Any other questions?
I just, notes, I heard something earlier, I think got a little snuck in there, but you are also a master electrician. So it sounds like, so for some of these smaller projects, you just do them, is what it seems, and we're kind of.
I try to draw a line there and not do new installations because of liability and insurance coverage. So I bid out almost all the work we do, so we get competitive pricing. But if it's maintenance, I'll change light bulbs, I'll do small electrical repairs, outlets, light switches, that type of stuff, just because I like to do it. But yeah, I do a lot of changing ceiling tiles, just daily stuff. I come in early and the building's empty, so yeah, I do some of that as well.
And besides being able to do it, bringing the experience of knowing what the vendor's doing, I think is invaluable, in a lot of cases.
It almost sounds like there's a sneaky second position That's almost there to end.
mean,
You're doing fantastic
Before,
work.
before these guys, I mean, honestly, what I would do is I had a certain fire chief, it was like my go-to guy that I needed something done quick, and he knew a guy who knew a guy. I mean, but in a town-wide operation, that's how we operated. Each department, some departments leaned on Public Works, other departments did their own thing. I mean, I think having it centrally located now to have those conversations is a lot better.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just for the council, I don't believe in doing things on low bid. I do believe in best value. So I don't like cheap. I like to do things the proper way, but the vendors will tell you I'm pretty frugal. So I hold them pretty tight, so.
To Councilor Siegel's point, I have not had the opportunity to meet Kevin yet. I can only play the new counselor card so long, but as you know, being new to council, there's certain things that I kept hearing over and over again. Your name kept popping up as somebody who was doing just a great job and really bringing an efficiency to that and looking at some of the things that are important. So we don't get a chance too often just to say thank you for the work that you're doing, but really have heard great things. So thank you.
And I'm also a taxpayer in this town, so I'm trying to look out for us as well.
Any other questions? All right, thank you to both of you. Ephraim, do you think this is a good time to take a break?
Did all the food show up yet?
No? Not all the food? Okay. We can go on to the library?
Maybe do the library.
Okay.
There it is.
Oh. Or what do you want to do?
It's up to you. Do you want to?
Because we have library rec and then like economic development and then capital part 2. There's a couple.
It's up to you. Do you want to just do the library fairly quickly?
Sure.
All right, we can do the library, yep.
All right, we'll do the library and then lunch.
Okay.
I want to look at the library.
Yeah.
I'll just stare at them.
James, this is beneficial. People want to eat lunch.
Yeah, we'll do the library.
Finish quickly. Thank you. So quickly on the library. So obviously we have the library and then the museum. One thing I did not mention with our working with the school department is, and what is the correct terminology for the position?
Yeah, I mean, we call her the outreach librarian.
Outreach librarian. Part of that $20-something thousand was in the school department budget. Very early on, I think it was grant funded.
Yes.
Grant funded the school, didn't have that anymore. They asked if we could absorb that. So the plan is that, and some of the more substantial increase that you see in the library's budget is moving that $20-something thousand, 21 and change into, fully into the library's budget to keep that position. I think right now, we would still operate the same way for the outreach, similar to what the schools had. But in the future, we might tweak it and have a conversation with the school on how to best operate that position. I want to make a note that every year, like clockwork, and rightfully so, James and staff asked me for more printed materials and more materials to keep us in line. Last year, we had a fairly good bump. This year, I did not give that, but I do want to mention that that's a request every year that we typically fall behind on printed materials and subscriptions and things like that. Any questions for James and the library?
Any questions about the library?
Oh,
Okay.
and speaking of printed materials, can you speak briefly to the relationship with the Friends of the Library? Do they provide, I know they do speakers, but do they also provide funding for printed materials?
They will if we can't do it with our regular budget, yeah. So,
Okay.
and also if we're looking to, because our regular budget wouldn't cover it, expand a particular collection outside of the norm, like when we're building out our graphic novel room downstairs, that sort of situation, we would lean on the Friends for that.
I think this year was me trying to keep the municipal budget as practical on the increase side as possible. That being said, I think the increases that the library typically asks for every year with printed materials and so on and so forth are very reasonable. I now have a 5- and a 3-year-old, and my wife likes to buy books on Amazon, and I'm really looking forward to the event. This is your chance to put the plug in for the book book sale, which is in May,
May
what?
2nd and 3rd.
May 2nd
first
and
week of
3rd,
May.
because I'm going to go bankrupt buying books on Amazon. And I will be visiting that sale. But to that point, and all kidding aside, materials and new materials are fairly expensive for the library. And we do lag behind, and it's something we're going to strive in future budgets, or if the council wanted to throw money at certain items. But future years, we're going to try to keep up with that.
Obviously, those costs just keep going up, you know, and we've run into a lot of difficulty with the suppliers as well lately, where it can be hard to get new books at the kind of discounts that we're used to.
Any other questions about the library? We can move on to the museum if you want.
Oh,
Do
sorry.
you have a question on the library?
Yeah, so I'm just, so about attendance.
What?
Attendance with events.
Yep.
You know, looking at 2019, right, 9,400 people, and then 2024, we're at 7,200. Is it less events being held, less people coming to each event?
No, I think it's, I mean, it may be less events being held that is somewhat reflected in that, but a lot of that is just COVID changed people. So, yeah, those attendance numbers, I mean, you can see, like, they've been steadily coming back since COVID. I mean, but COVID just wiped that out. And so,
I also think, I mean, some of it could be as simple as the weather that day.
Oh,
You
yeah,
know,
absolutely.
it's, well, the summer event was it last summer? It poured the whole event. I mean, it was still fairly good turnout, so I don't know, you know, to James's point, I think COVID could be changing people, but it could be other factors. But every event that I've been at has been very, very well attended.
yeah, I mean, like our story times, for instance, we average like 55 people at the preschool story time. I mean, that's every week that takes place. So attendance isn't really down. I mean, it does, obviously, the number doesn't lie, but it's, I really think that's just the gradual build-up back from zero.
And the circulation side, far larger than it was
Yeah.
pre-COVID.
Yep. And part of that is that we do a lot more digitally too now, like the ebooks and downloadable audiobooks than we used to do. And those they circulate in a different way. The turnover is quicker.
And then, so a year ago and 2 years ago, we were talking about grants.
Yep.
How has the library been in the past year about getting grants? Has that been working out?
We have not. And there are not many available, as I think Ephraim could speak to as well.
I think there's some, but we had this conversation ahead of this meeting because I knew this would come up. Our philosophy is still, we're not going to apply for grants for things we don't need or can't afford, but the marching orders throughout the town is if there's grant funding there and we can tackle it, we're going to pursue it. You know, and some are easier than others. Some may be hurdles in designs and projects, but we can't be shy about it because it's a resource.
To the museum. I just want to ask about the heat pump in there or
Yeah, Kevin, the panel's all set, the heat pumps, did we take care of the panel and the power supply?
We're still waiting to upgrade the service in the basement.
Okay.
Other than that, we're ready.
So they should be, it's funny because you had to figure out where the power came from the library to the back of the museum. It's an interesting building to figure out how things came to be, like power and water and all that, or not water, but how the utilities got in there. But this budget's minimal. I don't know how the mini splits and the heat pumps are we don't know how they're going to be operated yet. So it's entirely possible we may blow one of these line items out of the water. But the intent of the mini splits in the building is to be more inviting and preserve the building. And how that operates and when that operates, I'm not sure yet.
Okay.
So we'll see this summer. It's not going to be astronomical or anything like that, but I think it's going to be a learning curve in how do we operate in such a way that we get the most preservation and comfort for the building.
Thank you. Any other questions about the museum? Thank you very much, James.
Thank you.
Lunch? Is that what you?
It's up to you. I'm not saying
Well,
we can't.
Cindy's next. Will we do all day?
I would recommend getting lunch. Yeah.
take a break, Georgia.